In the stillness of the night, when the world is draped in shadows and only the softest sounds fill the air, history stirs. The whispers of ancient times call out, urging us to listen. Tonight, we journeyed back to one of history's most enigmatic and tragic events, the story of the Library of Alexandria. Imagine walking through marble corridors, where the scent of aged papyrus and ink lingers in the air. The soft glow of oil lamps flickers against scroll-lined walls, and the gentle murmur of scholars debating philosophy and science fills the halls. It was a sanctuary of knowledge, a place where the wisdom of the world converged, only to be lost in the haze of flames and the shadows of time. What led to its downfall? What secrets turned to ash? What stories, what ideas were we denied? Tonight, we explore the rise, grandeur, and tragic end of this legendary institution, the Library of Alexandria. But beyond its destruction lies a story of ambition, collaboration, and the unrelenting pursuit of knowledge. A sanctuary where not just books, but entire cultures converge to share wisdom in the hopes of transcending time. This was a place where the ideas of Greece, Egypt, Persia, India, and beyond met and mingled, sparking an intellectual revolution that would echo through the ages. The origins of the Library of Alexandria are rooted in the grand vision of Ptolemy I Soter, a former general of Alexander the Great. In the early 3rd century BCE, Ptolemy set out to transform Alexandria into not just a bustling port and political center, but the intellectual heart of the ancient world. The library was part of the Musaeum, an institution dedicated to the Muses, the 9 goddesses of the arts and sciences. But the Musaeum was more than a library. It was an academy, a place of learning, and a community of scholars. Ptolemy's ambition was not merely to gather books but to collect all the world's knowledge. His agents scoured markets and book collections across Greece, Persia, India, Egypt, and beyond. Texts were acquired through purchase, trade, and sometimes through less diplomatic means. One notable practice involved searching every ship that docked in Alexandria's bustling harbor. Any scrolls found were taken to the library, copied by skilled scribes, and the originals were often kept while the copies were returned. This aggressive collection method, though controversial, allowed the library to accumulate an unparalleled collection of texts, possibly hundreds of thousands of scrolls on subjects ranging from astronomy, philosophy, and medicine to history, mathematics, and poetry. The Ptolemy's practice of taking original works, often without returning them, sparked outrage in some quarters, particularly in Athens. While Ptolemy's agents might offer handsome sums of silver in exchange for borrowed texts, the refusal to return the originals left some cities, such as Athens, feeling slighted. This practice became part of the controversial reputation of the Ptolemies as collectors of knowledge, sparking both admiration and resentment. The Ptolemies also offered rewards for any new works brought to Alexandria. They aimed to attract scholars from across the known world, offering stipends, housing, and access to vast resources. This created a melting pot of ideas and cultures, fostering an environment where Greek, Egyptian, Persian, Hebrew, and Indian scholars could collaborate and learn from each other. The museum itself was a remarkable institution, with lecture halls, gardens, and even a dining hall where scholars could exchange ideas over meals. This blending of cultures and knowledge was not only rare but revolutionary, setting Alexandria apart as a true hub of enlightenment. The library's collection process was not without its legendary tales. It is said that Ptolemy III, eager to expand the library's collection, borrowed the official texts of great tragedies from Athens. Instead of returning them, he kept the originals, offering the Athenians beautifully copied versions along with a handsome sum of silver. Such anecdotes, whether fully true or not, highlight the lengths to which the Ptolemies would go to enrich Alexandria's repository of wisdom. Beyond mere collection, the library was deeply involved in preservation efforts. The humid climate of Alexandria posed a threat to ancient scrolls. and the librarians implemented careful storage techniques, including the use of sealed containers and climate-controlled rooms. These methods helped maintain the integrity of fragile documents and demonstrated the library's advanced approach to preservation. The importance of such techniques can be seen in the survival of key works. Without these efforts, many of the texts from antiquity might have faded away. The library was not merely a repository, but a living entity within Alexandria. The librarians and scholars often engaged in outreach, sending envoys to other cities and cultures to secure new works. They built relationships with scholars from distant lands, exchanging knowledge and ideas. This active engagement helped the library not only grow but adapt, constantly refreshing its collection with the latest works and ideas from across the world. The Library of Alexandria became more than just a building filled with scrolls. It became a beacon of intellectual curiosity and an enduring symbol of the human quest for knowledge. Beyond its vast collection of texts, the Library of Alexandria was a vibrant academic community. It was a haven for scholars from every corner of the ancient world. Mathematicians, astronomers, poets, and philosophers gathered here, contributing to an unprecedented age of learning. The library employed scholars not just as custodians of texts but as researchers, teachers, and writers. They were encouraged to study, to debate, and to push the boundaries of what was known. Prominent figures of the ancient world made the library their home. Euclid, often called the father of geometry, wrote his influential work Elements here, laying the foundation for mathematical studies for centuries. Eratosthenes, another scholar, served as the library's chief librarian. He was the first person to calculate the circumference of the Earth with surprising accuracy, using only shadows, a well, and basic geometry. His work showcased the library's emphasis on empirical research and observation. Eratosthenes' method of calculating the Earth's circumference demonstrates the library's commitment to experimental science, an approach that was revolutionary for its time. He used the most basic of tools to derive one of the most important measurements in history, proving that even ancient civilizations, given the right resources and encouragement, could unlock some of the greatest secrets of the universe. The library's scholars also engaged in groundbreaking translation projects. The translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, known as the Septuagint, was a monumental achievement. This work not only preserved Jewish scriptures, but also made them accessible to the Greek-speaking world. The library's scribes copied and preserved texts from civilizations far and wide, including Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Persian, and Indian traditions. The meticulous work of these scholars ensured that fragile texts endured, bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and future generations. Callincius, a poet and scholar, created the Pinax, a pioneering catalog of the library's holdings. This work was an early form of a library classification system, categorizing scrolls by subject and author, and offering summaries of their contents. The Pinax not only helped in managing the vast collection, but also set a precedent for future library systems, making it easier for scholars to find what they needed and gain an understanding of the library's extensive resources. This innovation was crucial in managing the vast collection and served as a precursor to modern library systems. It demonstrated the library's role not only as a storehouse of information, but as a model for future academic institutions. The library also hosted events, lectures, and debates, transforming it into a vibrant intellectual hub. Scholars exchanged ideas and challenged one another's theories, fostering a dynamic academic environment. The royal patronage and the resources available allowed for the exploration of ideas that might not have been possible elsewhere. These discussions were not limited to Greek philosophy and science. They included influences from Egyptian, Persian, Indian, and other cultures, making the Library of Alexandria a true melting pot of ancient wisdom. Life at the library was a blend of academic rigor and cultural exchange. Scholars often lived within the library complex, enjoying royal patronage, The environment encouraged not just study but also social interaction, where debates, lectures, and collaborative work flourished. The library was a crossroads where ideas met, mingled, and evolved, contributing to an intellectual legacy that would influence civilizations for centuries to come. The Library of Alexandria's Golden Age stands as a monumental period in the history of intellectual achievement. It was more than just a repository of scrolls. It became a sanctuary for scholars, a space where wisdom from diverse cultures converged and new knowledge flourished. During this era, the library's collection expanded exponentially, containing texts from across the ancient world. It became a beacon for intellectuals, drawing mathematicians, philosophers, scientists, and poets, all seeking the library's vast resources and collaborative environment. Under the generous patronage of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the library reached its zenith. The rulers of Egypt provided funding not only for acquiring texts, but also for securing scientific instruments, teaching tools, and valuable artifacts. The Ptolemies understood that knowledge was a form of soft power, a means to extend Egypt's influence far beyond its borders. Scholars at the library were granted stipends, accommodations, and the freedom to pursue their studies without financial constraints, making Alexandria a rare academic utopia in the ancient world. Scholars did more than merely preserve and copy texts. They conducted pioneering research. Breakthroughs were made in fields such as astronomy, geography, medicine, and literature. The library itself functioned as an early research institute, a place where experimentation and observation were highly valued. Knowledge was not static. Scholars were encouraged to challenge existing ideas and formulate new theories. The intellectual environment fostered a culture of continuous learning and curiosity, establishing the library's reputation as the intellectual heart of the ancient world. Cultural exchange was a cornerstone of this golden age. Scholars from Greece, Egypt, Persia, India, and other regions shared their knowledge, blending various intellectual traditions. The library's translators worked tirelessly to make texts available in multiple languages, facilitating the global exchange of ideas. This cross-cultural interaction not only enriched scholarship but also preserved knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. The Musaeum, which housed the library, was more than a collection of books. It was an active, vibrant academic community. It contained lecture halls, meeting spaces, and dining areas where scholars could discuss their ideas over shared meals. The Musaeum's tranquil garden provided a space for reflection, and its observatory allowed astronomers to chart the heavens. This holistic approach to education set a precedent for future academic institutions and contributed to the library's esteemed place in history. Collaboration and intellectual exchange were central to the Musaeum's activities. Public lectures and symposia were regularly hosted, offering scholars an opportunity to debate and discuss their ideas across disciplines. This collaborative spirit led to innovations that shaped fields such as navigation, agriculture, and engineering. The scholars' work was not just theoretical, it had real-world applications, demonstrating the profound impact of their research on everyday life. The Ptolemies supported this intellectual environment with more than just financial backing. They often participated in discussions with scholars, adding their insights and fostering a deeper connection between the political and intellectual spheres. This close engagement helped create an atmosphere of cooperation, leading to significant discoveries. For instance, Eratosthenes, the chief librarian, used the library's resources to calculate the Earth's circumference with astonishing accuracy, showcasing the practical value of Alexandria's academic pursuits. The library's influence extended far beyond academic circles. It attracted visitors from all walks of life: merchants, travelers, and foreign dignitaries, all eager to tap into the library's vast knowledge. These visitors carried Alexandria's ideas back to their homelands, helping to spread the city's intellectual reach. In this way, The library served as a bridge between cultures, further solidifying Alexandria's position as a cosmopolitan hub of the ancient world. The cultural and academic influence of the Library of Alexandria during its golden age was transformative. It was not only a vast repository of knowledge, but also a dynamic center for intellectual innovation. The library's role as a catalyst for new ideas and discoveries shaped multiple fields, from science to philosophy to the arts. One of the library's most enduring contributions was its commitment to the preservation and translation of texts. Among the most notable projects was the translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, the Septuagint. This monumental undertaking made religious and philosophical ideas accessible to a wider audience, fostering cross-cultural understanding. Similarly, works from Egyptian, Persian, Indian, and Mesopotamian traditions were preserved and shared, creating a unique synthesis of Eastern and Western knowledge. The library also produced original works that would have far-reaching consequences for the future. Figures like Euclid and Archimedes advanced scientific fields, with Euclid's Elements becoming the definitive text on geometry and Archimedes' work in physics influencing technological developments for centuries. The library's support of these scholars ensured that their discoveries would lay the groundwork for future progress. Beyond mathematics and science, the library was a center for preserving and promoting literary and historical works. It safeguarded epic poetry, plays, and historical records that might otherwise have been lost to time. The library's collection, which spanned multiple cultures and intellectual traditions, became a vital resource for later generations of scholars, ensuring that knowledge was both preserved and propagated. The influence of the library extended far beyond Alexandria's walls. Scholars who studied there traveled to other parts of the ancient world, carrying Alexandria's intellectual legacy with them. This dissemination of knowledge sparked advancements in fields such as astronomy, medicine, and mathematics in places like Rome, Greece, and Persia. The library's model of an academic institution where knowledge was not only preserved but also created became a template for future centers of learning. Culturally, the library played a central role in shaping Alexandria's status as a cosmopolitan city. Its open exchange of ideas fostered tolerance and understanding among the diverse populations that called the city home. Public lectures, debates, and intellectual gatherings were a regular feature of life in Alexandria, providing a forum for free expression and cross-cultural dialogue. The library's inclusive nature helped bridge cultural divides and promoted a sense of shared intellectual curiosity. The arts also flourished under the library's patronage. Alongside written texts, the library housed artworks and artifacts that showcased the achievements of different cultures. These collections inspired local artists and craftsmen, encouraging the creative expression of Alexandria's diverse cultural heritage. Through exhibitions and displays, the library not only preserved these works but also fostered a deeper appreciation for the arts. The library's legacy is evident in the institutions it inspired, from the Great Library of Constantinople to modern-day universities and research centers. The ideals of knowledge preservation, scholarly collaboration, and cultural exchange championed by the library continue to resonate in today's educational institutions. The legacy of the Library of Alexandria endures long after its physical destruction. While much of its collection was lost to history, the ideas, methods, and intellectual achievements cultivated within its walls continued to shape the world for centuries to come. The library's influence can be seen in the development of education, the preservation of texts, and the academic institutions that followed. The scholars of Alexandria set a precedent for academic inquiry that would influence generations. Their focus on empirical research, critical thinking, and synthesizing knowledge laid the foundation for later institutions of higher learning. The library's model, where scholars lived, worked, and collaborated in a shared academic space, was adopted by universities in medieval Europe, such as those in Bologna, Oxford, and Paris. These institutions built upon the traditions of academic freedom, open discourse, and the preservation of knowledge, fueling the intellectual movement that would ignite the Renaissance and subsequent eras of enlightenment. The spirit of translation and preservation championed by the Library of Alexandria found a lasting echo in other cultures. During the Islamic Golden Age, for example, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad mirrored Alexandria's approach, translating Greek, Persian, Indian, and other texts into Arabic, and contributing new discoveries in science, medicine, and philosophy. The intellectual legacy of Alexandria thus continued through the work of scholars in the Middle East, preserving ancient knowledge while expanding the boundaries of human understanding. In library science, the Pinax, an early cataloging system developed by Callinicus at Alexandria, became the basis for modern classification methods. The system's influence is still felt today in the ways libraries organize and categorize their collections. The principle that knowledge should be made accessible for the public good continues to guide libraries and educational institutions worldwide. The story of the Library of Alexandria and the loss of its treasures has inspired countless works of literature, film, and academic study. It serves as a powerful symbol of both human achievement and the fragility of knowledge. Its destruction remains a poignant reminder of the importance of preserving cultural heritage, prompting modern efforts to safeguard texts and artifacts from the ravages of time. The memory of the Library of Alexandria also lives on in modern initiatives aimed at preserving knowledge. The creation of digital libraries and archives, such as Project Gutenberg and the Internet Archive, mirrors the library's mission to make knowledge universally accessible. In Alexandria itself, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, opened in 2002, stands as a modern tribute to the ancient library. This new institution carries forward the spirit of learning, cultural exchange, and knowledge preservation, embodying the ideals that the ancient library so powerfully championed. The enduring legacy of the Library of Alexandria lies not just in the scrolls that were lost, but in the flame of curiosity it sparked. Its story reminds us to safeguard knowledge, celebrate learning, and remain ever curious about the world around us. The library's legacy whispers through time, urging us to honor the wisdom of the past while forging new paths toward enlightenment. The Library of Alexandria was far more than a repository of scrolls and manuscripts. It was a vibrant hub of intellectual life, where the sharpest minds of the ancient world converged. Within its halls, scholars, philosophers, scientists, and poets gathered, their voices mingling in thoughtful discourse. These great minds did more than advance their fields. They helped shape a legacy of knowledge that would resonate through the centuries. One of the foremost figures among them was Euclid, whose work, Elements, laid the groundwork for geometry as we know it today. His methodical approach, built on logical deductions and clear definitions, set a standard for academic rigor. Euclid's influence extended far beyond his era, as his work became the cornerstone of mathematical education for over 1,000 years. It was not just the content of Elements, but his approach to systematic reasoning that set the stage for the scientific method. Another towering intellect was Eratosthenes, who served as the chief librarian of Alexandria. He is perhaps best known for his remarkably accurate calculation of the Earth's circumference, achieved through keen observation and simple geometry. Standing at the boundary between curiosity and science, Eratosthenes also created one of the earliest maps of the known world and devised a system of latitude and longitude that remains a fundamental part of modern cartography. His blend of empirical research and creative thinking embodied the spirit of Alexandria. Archimedes, the renowned physicist and engineer, also had ties to Alexandria. Though he spent much of his life in Syracuse, his connections to the library highlighted its far-reaching influence. Archimedes' work on buoyancy, famously illustrated by his Eureka, moment, and his development of war machines and mathematical theories showcased the seamless blend of practical and theoretical knowledge that the library nurtured. Beyond mathematicians and scientists, the library was home to literary visionaries. Callinicus, a poet and scholar, not only enriched literature with his elegant verses but also developed the Pinax, one of the earliest known library cataloging systems. His meticulous organization of the library's vast collection exemplified Alexandria's pioneering spirit in information management. Callinicus's literary work, characterized by learned allusions and polished style, bridged the cultural worlds of Greece and Rome, showing how the library's influence extended beyond academia. Apollonius of Rhodes, another literary giant, served as a librarian and authored Argonautica. His retelling of the myth of Jason and the Argonauts infused classical stories with fresh perspective and nuanced character development. His epic stood as a testament to the creative freedom Alexandria offered, where scholars were encouraged to innovate and reinterpret tradition. The library's embrace of diversity extended to scholars from beyond the Greek world. Medical pioneers such as Herophilus and Erasistratus made significant strides in anatomy and physiology. Herophilus, often called the father of anatomy, performed dissections that led to new understandings of the human body, while Erasistratus explored the nervous and cardiovascular systems. Their work was groundbreaking, demonstrating Alexandria's role as a center for scientific and medical exploration. Jewish scholars also contributed to the library's intellectual tapestry. The translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, known as the Septuagint, was a monumental project that not only preserved Jewish texts, but also facilitated their introduction to a broader Hellenistic audience. This translation effort showcased the library's commitment to cross-cultural scholarship and its role in promoting dialogue between traditions. Within this crucible of ideas, collaboration flourished. Historians, scientists, and philosophers shared insights and engaged in spirited debates, creating a dynamic learning environment. Public lectures and discussions turned scholarship into a communal experience, where learning was not confined to the scrolls but lived out in open discourse. Ultimately, the scholars of Alexandria did more than produce knowledge, they set a timeless standard for intellectual pursuit. Their methods, from empirical research to literary analysis, became templates for future academic institutions. They remind us that the true wealth of a library lies not in its collection, but in the fertile minds it cultivates. The Library of Alexandria was more than a center of academic research, it was a cultural beacon whose influence radiated far beyond its walls. The library's impact permeated art, philosophy, politics, and religion, transforming Alexandria into a vibrant nexus where ideas and cultures intertwined. Within this dynamic environment, the boundaries between scholarly study and cultural expression blurred, fostering a unique synergy that inspired generations. One of the library's most enduring cultural contributions was its role in preserving and promoting Greek culture. The library's collection included not only scientific texts and historical records but also literary and philosophical masterpieces. By safeguarding the works of Sophocles, Euripides, Homer, and Plato, the library became a custodian of Greek heritage during turbulent times. These preserved texts would later influence Roman literature and ignite the imagination of scholars during the Renaissance, demonstrating the library's lasting cultural legacy. However, the library's scope extended far beyond Greek works. Its scholars gathered texts from a wide array of cultures, promoting an unprecedented exchange of ideas. Translating these works into Greek allowed knowledge from Egypt, Persia, India, and beyond to reach a broader audience. This cultural bridge facilitated the dissemination of Eastern philosophies, medical knowledge, and technological innovations throughout the Mediterranean. The result was a rich fusion of traditions that inspired fresh perspectives and new discoveries. Alexandria's cultural influence was not limited to literature, and philosophy. It also extended into religion and spirituality. The city was a melting pot where Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, and early Christian traditions coexisted. Scholars at the library engaged in comparative studies of sacred texts, exploring profound philosophical and theological questions. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible produced under the library's auspices, became a foundational text for early Christians. It played a crucial role in spreading Jewish and Christian teachings across the Hellenistic world, underscoring the library's influence on religious thought. The arts flourished under the library's patronage. Alexandria became renowned for its vibrant theater scene, where plays by Greek dramatists were performed alongside new works by local playwrights. The library supported poets, playwrights, and artists, fostering an environment where creative expression was encouraged and celebrated. Public readings, performances, and debates became integral to the city's cultural life, drawing diverse audiences and promoting a shared appreciation for the arts. The physical city of Alexandria itself mirrored the library's cultural ethos. The towering lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, symbolized the city's role as a guiding light of knowledge and culture. The city's architecture, art, and public spaces showcased a harmonious blend of Greek, Egyptian, and Eastern influences, a testament to the library's impact on promoting cultural synthesis. The library's influence also reached into the realm of governance. Its scholars often advised rulers, contributing to policy discussions and shaping political strategies. The Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled Egypt from Alexandria, understood the power of knowledge and culture as tools of statecraft. By establishing Alexandria as a center of learning, they enhanced the city's prestige and attracted intellectuals and visitors from across the ancient world. Beyond the city's walls, the library's cultural reach extended through its scholars' travels and correspondence. The library maintained connections with other centers of learning, such as Athens, Rhodes, and Pergamon. Through these networks, the library helped create a web of knowledge that linked distant regions, allowing the exchange of ideas that enriched both Alexandria and the broader ancient world. In the end, the Library of Alexandria was not merely a collection of texts, it was a catalyst for cultural growth. It influenced literature, art, religion, and politics, planting cultural seeds that would continue to grow long after the library itself was lost to history. The true measure of its impact lies not just in the scrolls it preserved, but in the inspiration it provided for creativity, curiosity, and cross-cultural exchange that echoed through the ages. The legacy of the Library of Alexandria is inseparable from the scholars who filled its halls with ideas and inquiry. These brilliant minds were not merely keepers of ancient texts, they were pioneers whose work laid the foundations for modern disciplines. Their intellectual curiosity, rigorous methodologies, and willingness to challenge conventional thought created a scholarly tradition that continues to inspire to this day. Among the most influential of these scholars was Euclid, whose work in Alexandria led to the creation of Elements, a treatise that shaped the study of geometry for over 2 millennia. Euclid's systematic approach, emphasizing logic and structured reasoning, not only influenced ancient mathematicians, but also guided Renaissance thinkers, and remains integral to modern mathematical education. His work embodies the library's emphasis on clarity, precision, and enduring scholarly standards. Eratosthenes, who served as the library's chief librarian, exemplified the spirit of discovery that defined Alexandria. His innovative method for calculating the Earth's circumference demonstrated not only remarkable accuracy but also the library's dedication to empirical research. By using simple observations and geometry, Eratosthenes provided one of history's earliest proofs of the Earth's roundness. His contributions to geography, including the development of a coordinate system with latitude and longitude, underscored the library's influence on scientific thought. In the realm of medicine, Herophilus, and Erasistratus conducted groundbreaking studies that challenged long-standing misconceptions. Herophilus, often called the father of anatomy, performed detailed human dissections, identifying organs and their functions with unprecedented accuracy. Erasistratus contributed to early understandings of the nervous and cardiovascular systems. Their willingness to explore the human body with a scientific eye set the stage for future medical advancements, showcasing the library's support for bold and innovative research. Astronomy also flourished under the library's roof. Scholars like Aristuchus of Samos proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system long before Copernicus, demonstrating Alexandria's readiness to entertain revolutionary ideas. Hipparchus, another luminary, compiled a comprehensive star catalogue and introduced the concept of precession, revealing the slow shift of the Earth's axis over time. These astronomical theories, while not universally accepted in their time, highlighted the library's role as a crucible for forward-thinking ideas that would later shape our understanding of the cosmos. The literary world was equally enriched by the library's scholars. Callinicus, both a poet and a scholar, developed the Pnyx, one of the earliest known library catalogues. His methodical approach to organizing the library's vast collection set a precedent for modern library sciences, illustrating how the library was as much about preserving knowledge as it was about generating new insights. Callinicus' poetry, with its refined style and intellectual depth, also bridged the cultural gap between Greece and Rome, influencing later Roman poets. Philosophy, too, found fertile ground in Alexandria. The library welcomed a diverse array of philosophical traditions, including Stoicism, Epicureanism, and Platonism, alongside Egyptian and Eastern thought. This blend created a vibrant intellectual community where ideas were debated and synthesized. The library's scholars engaged in early comparative studies, laying groundwork for future academic fields like comparative religion and intercultural philosophy. What set Alexandria apart was not only its scholars' achievements, but also their role in society. These intellectuals were not isolated from the world. They advised rulers, participated in civic debates, and contributed to education both locally and through correspondence with other learning centers. Their work connected Alexandria to a broader network of knowledge that stretched across the ancient world, extending the library's influence far beyond its physical location. Even after the library's physical destruction, the influence of its scholars endured. Their works were preserved, copied, and studied by future generations. When Renaissance scholars rediscovered these ancient texts, they helped fuel a new age of learning and exploration, demonstrating how the library's legacy continued to spark intellectual revolutions centuries later. The scholars of Alexandria were more than historians of ancient wisdom. They were architects of a bridge between the ancient and modern worlds. Their enduring legacy is a testament to the transformative power of knowledge and the importance of nurturing curiosity and scholarship. Though the flames may have consumed the library's walls, the light of its scholars' wisdom still illuminates the path of human progress. Amidst the grand architectural wonders of Alexandria stood a place that was more than just a library. It was the Musaeum, a temple of learning dedicated to the Muses, the Greek goddesses of the arts and sciences. The Musaeum was a sanctuary for scholars, a vibrant center of research, and a pioneering institution that set the stage for modern academia. Its influence extended far beyond the physical walls, shaping the intellectual and cultural development of the ancient world. The Musaeum was not merely a building but a complex that housed scholars, lecture halls, gardens, and communal dining spaces. It functioned as an ancient research institute where scholars were provided with the resources and support they needed to pursue their studies. Funded by the Ptolemaic kings, scholars lived within the Musaeum and received stipends, allowing them to focus entirely on their work without the distractions of daily survival. This patronage created an environment where intellectual exploration was not only encouraged but celebrated. What set the museum apart was its interdisciplinary approach. Scholars from diverse fields including astronomy, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, and literature collaborated freely, breaking down the barriers between disciplines. This cross-pollination of ideas led to groundbreaking discoveries and innovations. It was here that Eratosthenes measured the Earth's circumference, that Herophilus and Erasistratus advanced the study of human anatomy, and that early theories of the heliocentric solar system were proposed. The museum's scholars contributed to every facet of knowledge, demonstrating the power of an integrated academic community. The facilities at the museum were designed to support scholarly life. Lecture halls hosted debates and presentations, where scholars shared their findings and challenged each other's theories. The communal dining halls provided a social space where ideas could flow freely over meals, blending academic and casual conversation. The gardens were not merely decorative, but served as quiet spaces for contemplation and study. These elements contributed to an atmosphere where learning was a continuous, holistic experience, blending structured research with informal inspiration. The museum also had a spiritual and cultural dimension. As a temple dedicated to the Muses, it served as a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge was a sacred endeavor. The arts and sciences were not seen as separate pursuits, but as interconnected paths to understanding the world. The museum embodied this philosophy, promoting a balance between logical inquiry and creative expression. Its scholars wrote poetry, composed music, and engaged in philosophical discourse, embodying the ideal of a well-rounded education. Underpinning the museum's success was the Ptolemaic dynasty's unwavering support. The Ptolemies recognized the political and cultural power of knowledge, using the museum to enhance Alexandria's prestige as a beacon of enlightenment. The institution attracted scholars from Greece, Egypt, Persia, India, and beyond, making it a melting pot of cultural and intellectual exchange. The Ptolemies' investments in infrastructure, resources, and personnel ensured that the museum remained at the forefront of academic achievement for centuries. The museum's legacy lies in its pioneering model of higher education and research. It influenced the development of later institutions, including the universities of the medieval Islamic world and the Renaissance academies of Europe. The concept of a dedicated academic community, supported by patronage and focused on interdisciplinary collaboration, can trace its roots back to this ancient institution. The museum was not just a place where knowledge was stored, but where it was actively created and shared. Through the museum, the Library of Alexandria became more than a collection of scrolls. It was the heart of an intellectual ecosystem where ideas thrive and knowledge flourish. The museum's spirit of inquiry and collaboration continues to inspire educational institutions around the world, reminding us that true enlightenment is achieved not in isolation, but through the collective efforts of curious minds dedicated to exploring the mysteries of the universe. The Museum of Alexandria, often overshadowed by the legendary status of the library itself, was an integral part of the intellectual ecosystem that defined the city's golden age. The museum, whose name is derived from the Greek word for the seat of the Muses, was not a museum in the modern sense, but rather a center for research, learning, and creativity. It stood as a monumental institution dedicated to the arts sciences and all forms of scholarly pursuit. The museum was established as part of the grand vision of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which sought to position Alexandria as the world's leading center of knowledge. The institution was modeled after the philosophical schools of Athens, but expanded upon this idea by integrating a broader spectrum of academic disciplines. It featured lecture halls, laboratories, observatories, and even spaces for artistic expression, fostering a unique environment where scholars could immerse themselves fully in their studies. A vital feature of the museum was its status as a home to resident scholars. These scholars, who came from across the ancient world, were provided with stipends, free lodging and meals, allowing them to dedicate their time entirely to intellectual pursuits. Unlike typical academic institutions of the time, which often focused on a specific field, the museum embraced a multidisciplinary approach. Mathematicians, astronomers, poets, physicians, and philosophers coexisted under one roof, exchanging ideas and collaborating on pioneering research. One of the most remarkable aspects of the museum was its role as a hub for scientific advancement. The institution housed an observatory where astronomers like Aristarchus of Samos studied the heavens, proposing early heliocentric models of the solar system. Medical researchers dissected human and animal bodies, greatly advancing anatomical knowledge, while mathematicians developed theories that would underpin modern science. The museum's laboratories were a precursor to modern research institutions, where experiments and empirical studies were conducted with rigor and curiosity. Beyond the sciences, the museum was a sanctuary for the arts and humanities. It supported poets, historians, and musicians, providing a platform for artistic and cultural endeavors. The institution's inclusive nature meant that both empirical research and creative expression were valued, contributing to the well-rounded education of its scholars. The blending of scientific inquiry with the arts fostered a holistic approach to learning, demonstrating a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all forms of knowledge. The Ptolemaic support for the museum extended beyond mere funding. The ruling dynasty frequently engaged with the scholars, participating in discussions and debates. This royal patronage not only ensured the institution's prosperity but also helped maintain a culture of academic freedom. Scholars at the museum were encouraged to question established norms and to pursue knowledge without fear of censorship, a rarity in the ancient world. The influence of the museum extended far beyond Alexandria. The discoveries and innovations made within its walls disseminated through the library's vast network, reaching scholars and thinkers in distant lands. The museum's contributions to medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and literature left an indelible mark on the ancient world, many of which resonated through the centuries, shaping the foundations of Western science and culture. While much of the museum's physical structure has been lost to history, its legacy endures. The model of a state-supported research institution, promoting both the sciences and the humanities, set a precedent for modern universities. The museum exemplified an ideal where knowledge was not merely preserved but was continuously created, debated, and shared, a true temple of learning that stood as a testament to humanity's quest for understanding. The cultural legacy of the Museum of Alexandria is one of profound and lasting influence. As a beacon of knowledge and a cradle of scholarly exchange, the museum not only enriched the ancient world but also laid foundational stones for modern intellectual traditions. It was a place where ideas flowed freely and cultures mingled, fostering an environment that celebrated diversity of thought and the pursuit of truth. One of the museum's most significant contributions was its role in preserving and translating ancient texts. Scholars at the museum undertook ambitious translation projects, including the famed Septuagint, which translated Hebrew scriptures into Greek. This monumental effort not only made Jewish texts accessible to the Hellenistic world but also set a precedent for cultural and linguistic exchange that influenced later works of translation and preservation. The museum's scribes and scholars painstakingly copied works from Egypt, Greece, Persia, India, and beyond, ensuring that ancient wisdom was not only maintained but also shared widely. The museum also played a crucial role in the development of scientific methodology. The empirical research conducted there set standards for observation, experimentation, and documentation. Figures such as Herophilus and Erasistratus, who conducted anatomical studies and pioneered early medical research, demonstrated the museum's dedication to advancing human understanding through systematic inquiry. The work of these scholars influenced not only ancient medicine, but also the practices of future generations. contributing to the evolution of medical science as we know it today. Beyond its scholarly achievements, the museum was a vibrant center of cultural life. It hosted lectures, debates, and public readings, transforming intellectual discourse into a communal experience. The arts were also celebrated within its walls, with poets, playwrights, and musicians finding a platform to share their creations. This blend of science and art underscored the museum's holistic approach to education, promoting the idea that creativity and intellect were equally vital to human development. The museum's influence extended far beyond Alexandria's borders. Through its vast network of scholars and correspondents, the institution's ideas and discoveries reached distant lands. Ancient records suggest that the museum maintained correspondence with other centers of learning, facilitating a flow of knowledge that connected Alexandria with Athens, Rome, and even as far as India. This exchange of ideas contributed to a form of globalization of knowledge, where the insights of one culture enriched and informed others. Perhaps one of the most enduring legacies of the Museum of Alexandria is its inspiration for future institutions of learning. The concept of a state-sponsored research facility where scholars could live, study, and collaborate set a model that would be echoed in medieval universities, Renaissance academies, and modern research institutions. The museum's ideals of open inquiry, cultural exchange, and a multidisciplinary approach to learning continue to resonate, demonstrating the timeless value of a place where knowledge is both preserved and created. Although the museum itself did not survive the passage of time, its spirit lives on in the institutions it inspired and in the collective memory of humanity's pursuit of knowledge. The legacy of the museum is not just in the texts that survived or the discoveries that were made, but in the enduring ideal that knowledge should be shared, debated, and celebrated, a legacy that continues to light the path forward for scholars and dreamers alike. The Library of Alexandria was not only a haven for knowledge, but also a crucible where cultures met and mingled through the power of translation. The translation work carried out within its marble halls was nothing short of revolutionary. This process allowed scholars from different civilizations to access each other's wisdom, bridging linguistic divides and preserving texts that might otherwise have been lost to time. It was here that Greek, Egyptian, Persian, Hebrew, and Indian works found new life in new languages, enriching the world's intellectual tapestry. One of the most significant translation projects undertaken at the library was the creation of the Septuagint. This Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible was not only a monumental scholarly endeavor but also a cultural milestone. Commissioned by Ptolemy II Philadelphus, the project brought together 72 Jewish scholars who, according to tradition, worked independently to produce identical translations. While the truth of this tale may be more legend than fact, the outcome was a text that became a cornerstone of religious and historical study in the Greek-speaking world. The Septuagint provided a crucial link between Jewish and Hellenistic cultures and influenced early Christian thought, underscoring the library's role as a mediator of ideas. Translation at the library was not a mere mechanical task, but an intellectual art form. Scholars not only translated texts, but also provided commentaries, clarifying obscure passages and offering insights that bridged cultural gaps. The process involved intense collaboration with linguists, historians, and philosophers, often working side by side. This collaborative spirit helped ensure that translations were not only accurate but also culturally resonant. By maintaining the nuance and context of the original works, the library's translators preserved the integrity of the texts while making them accessible to new audiences. Beyond religious texts, the library's translation efforts extended to scientific, medical, and philosophical works. Texts from Babylon, Persia, and India were translated into Greek, introducing new ideas and knowledge systems. For instance, the translation of Persian astronomical texts enriched Greek understanding of the cosmos, while Indian mathematical concepts, such as early forms of the decimal system, began to influence Greek scholars. These translations were more than scholarly exercises, they were acts of cultural exchange that had a profound impact on the development of Western thought. The library's translation work also served a pragmatic purpose. Alexandria was a bustling port city, a crossroads of trade routes where merchants and travelers from around the world converged. By translating texts into Greek, the library helped facilitate commerce and diplomacy, offering practical knowledge to those who navigated the complexities of the ancient world. Manuals on navigation, trade practices, and even medical texts were translated and made available, contributing to Alexandria's reputation as a center of both intellectual and practical learning. In its translation work, the library demonstrated an early form of what we might now call cultural preservation. Many of the original texts brought to Alexandria no longer exist in their original form, lost to the sands of time and the fragility of ancient materials. However, because these works were translated and copied at the library, their knowledge endured. The translation projects at the Library of Alexandria thus served as a bridge not only between cultures but also across centuries, allowing the voices of the past to speak to the future. The preservation of texts at the Library of Alexandria was not merely a matter of storing scrolls on shelves. It was a deliberate and sophisticated effort to safeguard the wisdom of the ancient world for future generations. The library's preservation practices were advanced for their time, reflecting a deep understanding of the fragility of written materials and the enduring power of knowledge. One of the library's most remarkable preservation methods involved the meticulous copying of texts. Skilled scribes, often trained scholars themselves, dedicated their days to replicating fragile scrolls onto fresh papyrus. This was not a simple task. It required precision and attention to detail to avoid transcription errors. The scribes often worked in well-lit rooms with ample writing tools, surrounded by the quiet hum of scholarly activity. Their work was vital, as it not only maintained the library's collection, but also allowed rare and valuable texts to be shared with other centers of learning. The library also implemented physical measures to preserve its collection. Scrolls were stored in climate-controlled rooms, using the architecture of the building to maintain cool, dry conditions. Special containers protected the scrolls from moisture and pests, a practice ahead of its time. The librarians categorized texts systematically, which not only made the collection more accessible, but also reduced the handling of delicate materials. Such foresight helped many works survive longer than they might have otherwise. Beyond physical preservation, the library was instrumental in preserving the intellectual content of texts. Scholars engaged in critical analysis, producing commentaries and annotations that clarified and expanded upon the original works. These scholarly notes were often recorded alongside the texts themselves, creating a rich dialogue between ancient authors and contemporary minds. This practice added layers of understanding to the texts and ensured that future generations could grasp their significance. The preservation efforts at Alexandria extended to endangered works from other cultures. During periods of conflict or decay in other regions, the library acted as a sanctuary for vulnerable texts. Works from the crumbling libraries of Athens, the burning archives of Persia, and the fading traditions of Egypt found refuge in Alexandria. By providing a safe haven for these texts, the library preserved not only information but also cultural heritage, offering a legacy that would influence civilizations far beyond its own era. The legacy of the library's preservation work is seen in the survival of classical knowledge through the centuries. Many of the Greek and Roman texts that fueled the Renaissance and the scientific revolution were only available because they had been preserved, translated, and studied in Alexandria. When medieval scholars in the Islamic world and later in Europe sought the wisdom of the ancients, They often turned to texts that had passed through the library's hands. In a broader sense, the Library of Alexandria set a standard for the preservation of knowledge. It demonstrated that the survival of culture and ideas depended not just on the creation of works but on the care and intention with which they were maintained. By prioritizing preservation, the library created a ripple effect, ensuring that the flame of ancient wisdom continued to burn long after its own walls had turned to ash. The process of preservation at the library was not solely a technical endeavor but also a cultural mission. The library's leadership understood that texts were more than mere words on papyrus. They were vessels of human experience, carrying the voices of poets, the theories of scientists, and the histories of entire civilizations. This reverence for knowledge drove their meticulous preservation practices, where scrolls were treated almost as sacred objects. Special ceremonies were sometimes held when acquiring particularly significant texts, symbolizing the deep respect for the wisdom they contained. Additionally, the library's network of scribes and scholars played a critical role in spreading preserved works beyond Alexandria. By establishing connections with other centers of learning, the library ensured that its preserved texts were not confined to its walls. The dissemination of knowledge helped cultivate new intellectual hubs, influencing both contemporary and future scholars. Ultimately, the library's dedication to preservation served as an early model for modern archival practices. It highlighted the necessity of protecting cultural heritage against the ravages of time, war, and neglect. By preserving texts and ensuring their widespread dissemination, the library safeguarded ancient wisdom as a treasure to be cherished, allowing its light to guide generations long after the library itself had become a memory of history. The Library of Alexandria was not only a repository of texts, but also a dynamic force for education and enlightenment. It served as a beacon of learning, guiding the ancient world through history with its unwavering light of knowledge. The library's influence extended far beyond its walls, shaping generations of thinkers, scholars, and citizens who benefited from its vast resources. At its core, the library was a place of study and teaching. Unlike modern libraries, which primarily provide access to information, the Library of Alexandria was an academic institution in its own right. Scholars who resided there were not merely caretakers of texts, but active contributors to the intellectual community. They conducted research, engaged in debates, and wrote on subjects ranging from astronomy and mathematics to poetry and philosophy. The library functioned as both a university and a research institute, where ideas were not only preserved but also created and challenged. The library's scholars engaged in rigorous study and inquiry. They gathered in lecture halls, gardens, and shaded porticos to discuss and dissect the great works of their time. These discussions were not confined to any single discipline. Instead, the library encouraged interdisciplinary study, allowing scholars to draw connections between fields such as medicine, engineering, and the arts. This holistic approach to learning fostered innovation and produced groundbreaking ideas that would shape history. One of the library's most significant contributions to education was its emphasis on teaching. The scholars of Alexandria were not isolated in ivory towers. They taught students who came to Alexandria seeking knowledge. These students, who hailed from across the ancient world, would later carry the teachings of the library back to their homelands, spreading its influence like ripples across water. Through this exchange of knowledge, the library helped create a network of learning that spanned continents and cultures. In addition to formal education, the library also played a role in public learning. It hosted lectures, public readings, and performances that were open to the citizens of Alexandria. These events transformed the library into a cultural hub where art, science, and philosophy were accessible to a broader audience. By bridging the gap between scholarly study and public discourse, the library helped cultivate a well-informed and intellectually engaged community. The influence of the Library of Alexandria reached far beyond the Ptolemaic dynasty and the borders of Egypt. Its scholars corresponded with intellectuals from Greece, Rome, India, Persia, and beyond. This exchange of ideas fostered an early form of globalization of knowledge. The library's translation projects, such as the famed translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, the Septuagint, opened new channels for cultural and intellectual exchange. By making texts accessible in different languages, the library contributed to a shared scholarly tradition that transcended national and linguistic barriers. The legacy of the Library of Alexandria is seen in how its model influenced future institutions. The concept of a library as a center for both the preservation and generation of knowledge set a precedent that would inspire the great libraries of antiquity and beyond. Institutions such as the Library of Pergamon, the libraries of the Roman Empire, and medieval centers of learning like the House of Wisdom in Baghdad borrowed from Alexandria's vision. The integration of research, teaching, and public education at Alexandria provided a blueprint for modern universities and research institutions. Even after its decline, the spirit of the Library of Alexandria lived on through its influence on scholars and institutions. The early Islamic scholars of the medieval period, who played a crucial role in preserving and translating ancient Greek texts, were part of a scholarly tradition that had roots in Alexandria. When these texts re-emerged in Europe during the Renaissance, they helped ignite an intellectual revival that would reshape the world. The wisdom that the library had once preserved and generated continued to echo through the ages, a testament to its enduring impact on human civilization. The Library of Alexandria's role as a beacon of learning also had symbolic power. Throughout history, it has been a symbol of the human quest for knowledge and the fragility of cultural heritage. Its destruction became a cautionary tale about the vulnerability of knowledge in the face of conflict, neglect, and time. The library's story reminds us of the importance of preserving not only books and texts, but also the spirit of inquiry and discovery that drives humanity forward. In its heyday, the library stood as a shining example of what a society could achieve when it valued education, curiosity, and openness to new ideas. It was a testament to the strength of cultural and intellectual exchange, showing how the sharing of knowledge could build bridges between people and cultures. While the physical library may have vanished, its legacy endures as a guiding light for all who seek wisdom and strive to keep the flame of knowledge burning brightly in the world. The Ptolemaic dynasty's legacy is often intertwined with the grandeur of ancient Egypt, the construction of temples, the flourishing of trade, and the iconic splendor of Alexandria. However, one of their most profound contributions to history was their unwavering patronage of learning, most notably through the Library of Alexandria. This dynasty of Macedonian origin, descending from one of Alexander the Great's trusted generals, Ptolemy I Soter, established a reign that not only wielded political power but also championed intellectual pursuits. From its inception, the Ptolemaic dynasty recognized the potent influence of knowledge and culture. Ptolemy I Soter, the founder of the dynasty, envisioned Alexandria not merely as a political capital but as a beacon of learning for the Hellenistic world. His vision set the foundation for a cultural and intellectual renaissance that would last for centuries. The establishment of the Library of Alexandria and the Musaeum was a deliberate act of statecraft, intended to attract scholars, scientists, and artists from across the known world. Under Ptolemy I, the library began amassing its vast collection of texts. The dynasty's ambition to gather all human knowledge was evident in their aggressive acquisition strategies. Agents were dispatched to distant lands to purchase, copy, or even confiscate texts. Ships docking at Alexandria were searched for scrolls, which were copied meticulously, often with the originals being kept by the library and the copies returned to their owners. This practice, though controversial, demonstrated the lengths to which the Ptolemies would go to fulfill their scholarly aspiration. Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who succeeded his father, took these efforts to new heights. He expanded the library's collection and institutionalized the support of scholars by offering stipends and accommodation. Ptolemy II's reign saw Alexandria thrive as a global intellectual hub. It was during his rule that the translation of the Hebrew scriptures into Greek, the Septuagint, was commissioned, reflecting a desire to integrate diverse cultural and religious traditions into the Hellenistic fold. The dynasty's patronage extended beyond the collection of texts. They actively engaged in fostering a vibrant community of scholars. The Musaeum, with its lecture halls, observatories, and living quarters, served as a research institute where scholars could dedicate themselves to study and discovery. This support was not limited to theoretical work. Practical research in medicine, engineering, and astronomy was also encouraged. The Ptolemies understood that innovation in these fields could enhance their power and prestige, as well as contribute to the greater good. Subsequent Ptolemaic rulers continued this tradition, albeit with varying degrees of enthusiasm and effectiveness. However, the early foundations laid by Ptolemy I and II ensured that the cultural institutions they established had a momentum of their own. The dynasty's emphasis on learning created an enduring legacy that would outlast even their political dominion. Through their support, the Ptolemies positioned Alexandria as the intellectual heart of the ancient world, where ideas could flourish and knowledge could be preserved and expanded. The Ptolemies' approach to scholarship was not solely philanthropic. They understood the political value of culture and education. By establishing Alexandria as a center of learning, they reinforced their legitimacy as rulers of a culturally diverse empire. The library and museum were not just academic institutions, but also instruments of soft power, projecting an image of enlightened and cultured rule to both their subjects and foreign powers. The Ptolemaic dynasty's commitment to learning was not without its challenges. Political intrigue, economic pressures, and the gradual decline of the dynasty in its later years strained their institutions. However, the cultural infrastructure they built proved resilient. Even as the political fortunes of the Ptolemies waned, the legacy of their support for knowledge endured, influencing subsequent generations and leaving an indelible mark on the history of education. In conclusion, the Ptolemaic dynasty's role in fostering the Library of Alexandria and the Musaeum was a masterstroke of cultural policy. Their legacy as patrons of learning underscores the transformative impact of supporting education and scholarship. The dynasty's vision helped create a golden age of knowledge, demonstrating how the seeds of wisdom, when nurtured by enlightened leadership, can bear fruit for centuries to come. The Ptolemaic court was not merely a seat of political power but also a sanctuary for scholars, scientists, and artists. Unlike many other royal courts of the ancient world, where intellectuals served primarily as advisors or chroniclers, the court of Alexandria offered a different proposition. Here, the learned were not only welcome but celebrated, provided with resources and freedom to explore their curiosities. This environment helped transform Alexandria into a cultural and intellectual epicenter of the ancient world. From its earliest days, the Ptolemaic dynasty recognized the value of attracting brilliant minds to their capital. Ptolemy Isoter initiated this practice, offering scholars stipends, housing, and access to the Library of Alexandria's vast resources. His successors expanded upon this tradition, with Ptolemy II Philadelphus notably increasing state funding for intellectual pursuits. Scholars were treated as honored guests, their work seen as a reflection of the dynasty's enlightened rule. The museum, located adjacent to the library, served as the focal point of this academic community. Unlike the modern understanding of a museum, this institution functioned more like a research institute or university. It housed lecture halls, laboratories, observatories, and communal dining spaces where scholars could exchange ideas freely. This design fostered collaboration across disciplines, leading to significant advancements in fields ranging from astronomy and mathematics to medicine and literature. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Ptolemaic court was its openness to diverse cultures and ideas. Scholars from Greece, Egypt, Persia, India, and beyond were invited to contribute to Alexandria's academic discourse. The Ptolemies believed that the convergence of different traditions would enrich their own understanding of the world. This cosmopolitan approach helped Alexandria stand out as a beacon of learning, where debates and discussions often bridged the gaps between vastly different cultural and intellectual backgrounds. This thriving environment produced some of the ancient world's most renowned scholars. Figures such as Euclid, whose work in geometry remains foundational, and Eratosthenes, who accurately calculated the Earth's circumference, were not only supported by the Ptolemaic rulers but also encouraged to push the boundaries of human knowledge. The court also supported literary figures like Callinicus, whose contributions to poetry and library science influenced generations of scholars. The Ptolemaic court's patronage extended to practical sciences as well. Physicians like Herophilus and Erasistratus conducted pioneering research into anatomy and physiology with the support of the Musaeum's facilities. Their work laid early foundations for medical science, demonstrating the dynasty's commitment not only to theoretical knowledge but also to practical advancements that could benefit society. However, this golden age of scholarship was not without its tensions. The competitive atmosphere among scholars sometimes led to rivalries. The Ptolemaic rulers, keen to maintain their authority, had to carefully manage these dynamics to prevent intellectual debates from devolving into personal conflicts. Despite these challenges, the dynasty largely succeeded in maintaining an environment where ideas could thrive. Over time, as later Ptolemies faced political and economic difficulties, support for scholars waned. The vibrant court of earlier reigns became less capable of sustaining its intellectual community. Yet, the legacy of those early years continued to resonate. The works produced under Ptolemaic patronage influenced not only their contemporaries but also the generations that followed, preserving Alexandria's status as a center of learning long after the dynasty itself had faded into history. In conclusion, the Ptolemaic court was a remarkable blend of power and intellect. By offering a haven for scholars and fostering an environment of open inquiry, the dynasty set a precedent for how rulers could elevate their reign through the support of knowledge and culture. Alexandria's golden age was a testament to the transformative potential of enlightened patronage, a legacy that endured through the ages and echoed in the halls of later centers of learning around the world. The enduring legacy of the Ptolemaic dynasty's patronage of the Library of Alexandria extends far beyond the ancient world, echoing through time as a testament to the power of knowledge and the importance of cultural preservation. The Ptolemies, through their unwavering support, established a template for academic institutions that would inspire future generations. The influence of the library's practices such as cataloging, translation, and scholarly collaboration can be seen in the great libraries and universities of the medieval Islamic world, the Renaissance, and even modern research institutions. One of the most significant contributions of the Ptolemies was their emphasis on translation and the sharing of knowledge across linguistic and cultural boundaries. The translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, known as the Septuagint, is a prime example of how the library acted as a bridge between cultures. This translation not only preserved Jewish texts, but also made them accessible to the broader Hellenistic world, influencing Christian and Jewish traditions for centuries. The library's model of knowledge acquisition, which involved gathering texts from far and wide and promoting scholarly discourse, set a precedent for the development of future libraries and research centers. Institutions like the House of Wisdom in Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age mirrored Alexandria's spirit by translating and preserving Greek, Persian, and Indian texts. These scholars continued the work of the library's academics, building upon ancient Greek philosophies, mathematics, and sciences to make groundbreaking advancements in astronomy, medicine, and engineering. During the Renaissance, Europe's rediscovery of classical texts was in part a revival of Alexandria's legacy. The works of scholars like Euclid, Galen, and Aristotle, which had been preserved by Islamic scholars, were reintroduced to the West, igniting a new age of inquiry and enlightenment. The Ptolemaic model of patronage, where rulers supported scholars and their pursuits, found echoes in Renaissance courts, and later in the establishment of institutions, such as the University of Oxford and the Vatican Library. In modern times, the spirit of the Library of Alexandria lives on in places like the Library of Congress, the British Library, and research institutions worldwide. These libraries continue the mission of preserving knowledge, promoting learning, and fostering international collaboration. The rebirth of the library itself in 2002 with the opening of the Bibliotheca Alexandrina is a powerful symbol of this enduring legacy. The new library stands not only as a monument to the ancient world's achievements, but as a living institution dedicated to the ideals of knowledge and enlightenment championed by the Ptolemaic dynasty. The Ptolemies' vision for the Library of Alexandria was not merely about amassing texts, but about cultivating a culture of inquiry, debate, and discovery. Their legacy is a reminder that true power lies not only in political or military might, but in the fostering of ideas and the nurturing of human potential. The flames that consumed the original library could not extinguish its influence, which continues to inspire scholars, historians, and dreamers to this day. The enduring inspiration drawn from the Ptolemaic patronage is evident in modern educational philanthropy. Universities and research institutions worldwide still rely on endowments and grants from patrons who believe in the transformative power of education, just as the Ptolemies did. These modern benefactors understand that investing in knowledge is an investment in the future. The lasting impact of Alexandria's library serves as a powerful example of how nurturing scholarship and promoting free exchange of ideas can elevate societies and shape the course of history. The Library of Alexandria was not only a repository of Greek thought, but also a global nexus of knowledge exchange. From its earliest days, the library's mission extended beyond the acquisition of texts to the active pursuit of ideas from distant lands. It was a beacon to scholars, travelers, and traders who brought with them the wisdom of their homelands. This openness to foreign knowledge helped shape the library into an unparalleled institution of learning, bridging the intellectual divides between East and West. One of the most remarkable aspects of the library was its vast collection of works from diverse cultures. Texts from Egypt, Persia, India, Mesopotamia, and beyond lined its shelves. The library's scholars sought not only to preserve these works but to translate and study them, fostering a multicultural environment of learning. Through translation projects, such as the famed Septuagint, the library facilitated the exchange of religious, scientific, and philosophical ideas across linguistic barriers. Trade routes, including the Silk Road and maritime paths through the Red Sea, enabled Alexandria to become a crossroads of culture and commerce. Merchants brought with them scrolls and texts from China, Arabia, and the Indian subcontinent. These documents contributed to the library's collection, allowing scholars to explore new ideas in mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and natural sciences. The library's openness to foreign works demonstrated a forward-thinking approach that celebrated diversity and sought wisdom from all corners of the known world. The library's influence also reached beyond its walls through its scholars. Academics associated with the library traveled extensively, sharing their knowledge and engaging with other centers of learning. These exchanges enriched both Alexandria and the regions they visited, spreading Hellenistic thought while absorbing foreign insights. The library's scholars were not isolated but were active participants in a global dialogue, contributing to advancements in technology, philosophy, and the arts. The city of Alexandria itself reflected this international spirit. It was home to a cosmopolitan population, where Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, Persian, and other communities coexisted. This blend of cultures created a dynamic intellectual environment where ideas could mix and evolve. The library was at the heart of this exchange, offering a space where scholars from different traditions could collaborate. The interactions between Greek philosophers and Egyptian priests, for example, led to new interpretations of religion and science that would influence later thought. Through its role as a mediator of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria helped cultivate a sense of shared human heritage. By preserving and disseminating works from diverse cultures, it reinforced the idea that wisdom was not the province of a single nation or people but a collective achievement. The library's legacy of cross-cultural exchange is a testament to the enduring power of knowledge to unite and inspire humanity. The library's translation efforts extended even further into the realms of ancient science and technology. By translating mathematical and astronomical texts from Babylon and India, Alexandrian scholars were able to merge Greek theories with Eastern innovations. This fusion of knowledge led to advancements in geometry, early calculus concepts, and astronomical theories that would influence scholars for centuries. The library's openness to these ideas demonstrated its commitment to intellectual progress and the merging of global wisdom into a cohesive body of knowledge. The Library of Alexandria was not merely a repository of texts, but a dynamic hub where the ideas of the world intertwined. As scholars from distant lands converged within its halls, their cultural perspectives and intellectual traditions blended, creating a tapestry of ideas that transcended geographic and linguistic boundaries. The library's influence in fostering cross-cultural exchanges played a crucial role in shaping the ancient world's understanding of science, philosophy, and the arts. One of the library's key contributions to this exchange was its role as a translation center. The translation of texts allowed Greek scholars to access the scientific and philosophical works of Persia, India, and Egypt. Likewise, the knowledge of Greek science and literature spread into the Eastern world. The famed Septuagint translation of the Hebrew Bible is a prime example of this practice, bridging religious and cultural divides by making Jewish scriptures accessible to Greek-speaking audiences. This act of translation not only preserved sacred texts, but also facilitated theological and philosophical discourse across cultures. The library's commitment to preserving and translating foreign works extended into scientific realms. Alexandrian scholars eagerly studied mathematical texts from Babylon, astronomy from India, and medical treatises from Egypt. They did not merely copy these works but engaged with them critically, comparing methodologies, experimenting, and expanding on existing knowledge. The influence of Babylonian mathematics, particularly in algebra and arithmetic, can be seen in the works of scholars like Euclid, whose elements synthesized and expanded on earlier mathematical traditions. Astronomy was another field enriched by the library's global connections. Texts from India and Babylon provided insights into celestial movements and calendar systems. These were invaluable to scholars like Eratosthenes, who famously calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy. By integrating observational techniques and theories from different cultures, the library contributed to a more comprehensive understanding of the cosmos. The medical knowledge housed within the library also showcased a blend of traditions. Greek physicians like Herophilus and Erasistratus, who conducted pioneering work on human anatomy, likely drew upon Egyptian medical texts. The Egyptian tradition of embalming provided unique insights into the human body, influencing Greek anatomical studies. This synthesis of knowledge laid early foundations for medical science, demonstrating how cross-cultural collaboration could lead to advancements in practical fields that directly impacted people's lives. The arts and humanities also benefited from the library's exchange of ideas. By collecting and preserving works of poetry, theater, and history from different cultures, the library created a rich literary tradition that influenced generations of writers. Greek playwrights adapted themes from Egyptian and Persian myths, while historians used Persian and Egyptian records to build a broader understanding of ancient history. This blending of narratives helped construct a more nuanced and multifaceted view of the ancient world. Philosophical thought at the library was not bound by tradition but open to new interpretations. Greek philosophers engaged with Eastern philosophies, leading to syncretic ideas that found expression in schools of thought like Neoplatonism. This philosophy, which emerged in Alexandria, merged Platonic ideas with mystical elements from Eastern traditions. It exemplifies how the library served as a crucible where new philosophies could emerge from the meeting of diverse intellectual streams. The exchange of ideas within the library was not a one-way street. As much as it absorbed foreign wisdom, it also exported Greek thought back to other cultures. The works of Aristotle, Euclid, and Ptolemy, among others, were translated and studied in Persia, India, and later in the Islamic world. The library's role as a transmitter of knowledge helped preserve Greek science and philosophy through the centuries, influencing medieval scholars and contributing to the Renaissance. Ultimately, the Library of Alexandria's most profound legacy was its demonstration of the value of intellectual openness. By welcoming scholars from different traditions and encouraging the blending of ideas, the library created an environment where human knowledge could flourish. It championed the belief that wisdom could not be contained within the borders of a single culture, but was a shared treasure to be explored, expanded, and celebrated by all. The influence of the Library of Alexandria did not end with the final embers of its destruction. Rather, the intellectual currents it set in motion reverberated across centuries and continents, leaving a legacy that profoundly shaped the course of history. As scholars from all over the world made their way to Alexandria, they carried with them new ideas, techniques, and discoveries that traveled far beyond the Mediterranean. One of the most significant ways in which the library's legacy continued was through the spread of Hellenistic thought. Greek ideas in philosophy, science, and mathematics found their way into the intellectual traditions of Rome, Persia, India, and later the Islamic world. Figures like Euclid, Aristotle, and Ptolemy became central figures in these regions' scholarly pursuits. In many ways, the Library of Alexandria's role as a repository of Greek thought helped preserve and propagate the intellectual heritage of Greece to distant shores. In the Roman world, the library's influence was particularly evident. Roman scholars, particularly during the first few centuries CE, revered Greek knowledge. The Romans built upon Greek scientific discoveries and philosophical ideas, with many Roman intellectuals citing Greek scholars in their works. Roman medical knowledge, for example, was greatly shaped by Greek texts preserved in Alexandria, particularly the anatomical works of Herophilus and Erasistratus, which were later adapted and built upon by Roman physicians like Galen. The Roman Empire's vast network of roads and communication helped spread these ideas across the empire, creating a ripple effect that would echo through time. Further east, in the ancient kingdoms of Persia and India, the impact of the Library of Alexandria was felt in a similar manner. Persian scholars came into contact with Alexandrian teachings, particularly in astronomy and mathematics. Many of the mathematical concepts that would later form the basis for algebra were derived from the Babylonians whose work had been preserved and studied in Alexandria. These ideas were passed along through Persia, where scholars like Al-Khwarizmi would later develop and refine them into the field of algebra as we know it today. In India, the exchange of ideas between Alexandria and the subcontinent was not as well documented, but the traces of this interaction are still visible in the development of mathematical concepts like zero and the decimal system. These ideas, which originated in India, were passed westward via the Silk Road, where they were incorporated into the scientific and philosophical discourse of the Greco-Roman world. The blending of Eastern and Western mathematical traditions had a lasting effect on the development of mathematics in the medieval and Renaissance periods. Perhaps one of the most enduring aspects of the library's legacy was its profound influence on the Islamic Golden Age. During the 8th to 14th centuries, scholars in the Islamic world translated Greek texts preserved in Alexandria, including the works of Aristotle, Euclid, and Ptolemy, into Arabic. These scholars not only preserved these texts, but also expanded upon them, making significant advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Figures like Al-Khwarizmi of Avicenna and Al-Razi were instrumental in preserving and expanding upon the knowledge that had been first gathered in Alexandria. Their work would later be transmitted to Europe, sparking the intellectual revival of the Renaissance. The library's influence was also felt in the development of early scientific methods. The work of scholars in Alexandria helped lay the groundwork for the empirical approach to science that would later be developed by figures like Galileo and Newton. By emphasizing observation, experimentation, and the use of reason, the library helped foster an intellectual climate that would give birth to the scientific revolution centuries later. The library's legacy is also evident in the world of literature and the arts. The blending of Greek, Egyptian, and Persian narratives in the library's collection laid the foundation for the development of world literature. Greek playwrights, philosophers, and poets found inspiration in Egyptian and Persian mythologies, while historians used these works to create more accurate records of ancient history. This blending of cultural traditions would continue to influence the literature of the medieval and Renaissance periods, as well as the development of the modern novel and drama. Even today, the impact of the Library of Alexandria can be seen in the global exchange of knowledge. The modern library system, with its vast collections of books and resources from around the world, is a direct descendant of the library's spirit of intellectual curiosity and collaboration. The world of academia continues to build upon the foundation of cross-cultural exchange that was pioneered in Alexandria, and the pursuit of knowledge remains a unifying force for humanity. Ultimately, the legacy of the Library of Alexandria is a testament to the power of ideas to transcend boundaries and bring people together. In an era of global connectivity, the lessons learned from Alexandria's embrace of diverse knowledge are more relevant than ever. The library's influence on science, literature, and philosophy continues to shape our world today, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge is a collective endeavor, one that spans cultures, eras, and civilizations. The Library of Alexandria's history, though marked by its unparalleled achievements, was also defined by a series of turbulent events that cast long shadows over its legacy. Throughout its existence, Alexandria was a city at the crossroads of cultures, wealth, and intellectual exchange. Yet, this position also placed the library in the midst of political struggles, social unrest, and military conflicts, which would eventually take a toll on the institution and its priceless collections. From its early days, Alexandria had been a focal point of imperial ambitions. Founded by Alexander the Great, the city was meant to be a symbol of Greek dominance in Egypt. However, as the centuries passed and the Ptolemaic dynasty began to lose its grip on power, Alexandria's political stability was increasingly undermined. Rival factions vied for control, and tensions between different ethnic, religious, and political groups simmered beneath the surface. The Ptolemies, though staunch patrons of learning, were not immune to the political intrigues and military pressures that surrounded them. The struggle for power within the royal family often spilled over into public life, with Alexandria becoming a battleground for competing interests. These internal conflicts weakened the city's ability to protect its intellectual treasures, including the Library of Alexandria, from external threats. The library's position as the intellectual heart of the Mediterranean world also made it a target during times of foreign conflict. The rise of the Roman Empire, while initially beneficial to Alexandria's intellectual life, would bring its own challenges. As Rome expanded its influence in the region, the Ptolemies' position became increasingly precarious. The tensions between Rome and Egypt culminated in the famous conflict between Julius Caesar and Queen Cleopatra's brother, Ptolemy XIII. This struggle for power would bring Alexandria to the brink of destruction. In 48 BCE, Julius Caesar's forces laid siege to the city, marking one of the most devastating moments in Alexandria's history. While Caesar's eventual victory ensured Cleopatra's reign, the aftermath of the siege left the city deeply scarred. The library, located in the heart of Alexandria, was likely caught in the crossfire, suffering irreparable damage. The siege also marked the beginning of a series of events that would further destabilize the city and hasten the library's decline. Yet, this period of conflict was not limited to military invasions. Alexandria also faced significant internal strife. Tensions between the Greek, Egyptian, and Jewish populations erupted into violence on several occasions. These clashes reflected the underlying social and religious divisions that characterized life in the city. The library, as a symbol of intellectual and cultural unity, was caught in the crosscurrents of these tensions, making it vulnerable to the chaos that would follow. In addition to the external threats and internal turmoil, Alexandria's intellectual environment began to shift during this period. As the political landscape changed, so too did the city's relationship with its scholars. While the library remained a beacon of knowledge, its ability to attract and retain the finest minds was increasingly threatened by the instability of the surrounding environment. Scholars and philosophers, once eager to contribute to the library's vibrant intellectual community, began to seek refuge in more stable regions. This exodus of talent, coupled with the city's internal and external conflicts, marked the beginning of the end for Alexandria as a center of learning. Through all of this turmoil, the Library of Alexandria continued to stand as a symbol of intellectual achievement and resilience. Despite the numerous challenges it faced, the library's influence endured, thanks in part to its ability to adapt to the changing tides of history. However, the shadow of conflict that loomed over Alexandria would prove to be one of the defining factors in the library's eventual decline. The once thriving hub of knowledge would slowly be dismantled, not by a single catastrophe, but by the constant forces of war, political instability, and social unrest that tore at its foundation. One of the most iconic and tragic events in Alexandria's history was the siege of 48 BC, a moment when the city was thrust into the heart of the political and military conflict between Julius Caesar and the forces of Queen Cleopatra's brother, Ptolemy XIII. This siege, while primarily a political struggle for control of Egypt, would have far-reaching consequences for the Library of Alexandria, an institution that had long stood as a beacon of intellectual achievement and cultural exchange. The origins of the siege lay in the delicate power balance within the Ptolemaic dynasty. Cleopatra, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom, had been engaged in a bitter struggle with her younger brother Ptolemy XIII for control of Egypt's throne. The conflict had escalated when Caesar, who was deeply embroiled in the civil war between himself and Pompey, found himself caught up in the political turmoil of Egypt. Cleopatra, determined to secure her throne and political future, famously had herself smuggled into Caesar's camp in an effort to win his support. Caesar's arrival in Alexandria and his subsequent involvement in Egyptian affairs set the stage for the siege. Upon landing in the city, Caesar found himself confronted by Ptolemy XIII's army, which sought to oust Cleopatra and place the throne in the hands of her brother. As Caesar took sides with Cleopatra, the political situation deteriorated rapidly. Tensions between the factions erupted into open warfare, and the streets of Alexandria became a battleground. The siege itself was brutal and lasted for several months. Caesar's forces, although well-trained and highly experienced, were hampered by the urban environment, which made traditional siege tactics difficult. The city's dense population and narrow streets complicated both the defense and the offensive. Alexandria's strategic location, at the crossroads of vital trade routes, made it a city worth holding, but it also made it an irresistible target for conflict. Throughout the siege, Alexandria's iconic landmarks, including the royal palace and nearby buildings, were damaged. It was during this period that the Library of Alexandria suffered its most significant blow, though it is unclear exactly when and how the library was damaged during the siege. Many scholars believe that the fires ignited during the fighting likely reached the library's storerooms and caused ever destruction. In the chaos of war, the invaluable scrolls and manuscripts housed within the library's walls were either destroyed by fire, lost in the fray, or scattered beyond recovery. The consequences of the siege were not limited to the physical destruction of Alexandria. The intellectual heart of the city was torn apart, leaving the library in a state of ruin. Despite the eventual victory of Caesar and the restoration of Cleopatra to the throne, the library's status as the preeminent center of learning in the ancient world was irrevocably damaged. This event marked a turning point, not only in the history of Alexandria, but in the broader history of intellectual exchange. The aftermath of the siege left Alexandria in a fragile state. The city, though nominally under Caesar's protection, was deeply scarred by the violence of the conflict. Political instability continued to plague Egypt, and the library's former vibrancy as a center of learning was diminished. Scholars already weary from the tumultuous climate of the Ptolemaic period began to seek refuge in other parts of the empire, further depriving Alexandria of the intellectual dynamism that had once defined it. Though the library would continue to exist for some time after the siege, its power as a hub of knowledge had been irrevocably diminished. The loss of manuscripts, the destruction of texts, and the scattering of scholars all contributed to the library's eventual decline. The siege had been a pivotal moment in the library's history, a traumatic event that accelerated the institution's downfall and the erosion of Alexandria's role as the intellectual capital of the ancient world. In the years following the siege, Alexandria would never fully recover its former glory. While the city remained an important cultural center under Roman rule, it was no longer the singular beacon of learning that it had once been. The library, along with the intellectual life it had nurtured, would slowly fade into the annals of history, leaving behind only fragmented memories of a time when the pursuit of knowledge transcended borders and cultures. Though the Library of Alexandria endured for centuries, its eventual decline was a complex process, marked by a series of devastating events and shifts in political, religious, and intellectual climates. The library's destruction was not a single, decisive blow, but rather the result of multiple forces that eroded its foundations over time. From the fires of conflict to the changing tides of imperial power, the library's legacy was gradually dismantled. By the time Alexandria fell under the sway of the Roman Empire and later Christianity, the great institution was no longer the beacon of knowledge it had once been. The first major blow to the library came during the Roman occupation of Egypt. While Alexandria remained an important city under Roman rule, the Ptolemaic dynasty's support for the library had been a driving force behind its success. The library flourished under the Ptolemies, who sought to make Alexandria the center of learning and culture in the Mediterranean world. However, when the Ptolemaic rulers were displaced by Rome, the political and cultural focus of Alexandria shifted. The Romans, with their own interests in controlling Egypt's wealth and resources, were less inclined to maintain the intellectual institutions of the city. During the reign of Emperor Augustus, the library faced a sharp decline in funding and support. Though Augustus was a patron of arts and culture, his focus was primarily on consolidating Roman power, and intellectual pursuits were often seen as secondary to military and political concerns. Additionally, The changing political landscape meant that Alexandria's libraries and intellectual life lost their once central position in the Roman world. Though Alexandria still boasted many fine scholars and writers, the cultural dominance it had once enjoyed under the Ptolemies began to fade. Perhaps the most significant blow to the library's survival came during the later years of Roman rule under the reign of Emperor Aurelian in the 3rd century CE. In the early to 70s CE, Aurelian's forces launched a military campaign to recapture Alexandria from Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. The siege that followed, though ultimately successful for Rome, resulted in significant destruction across the city. Many buildings, including portions of the library, were damaged or destroyed in the fighting. It is believed that the library, already in a state of disrepair, suffered irreparable harm during these events. However, the library's decline was not solely due to military conflict. The rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire also played a role in the gradual loss of Alexandria's intellectual heritage. As Christianity spread throughout the empire, pagan institutions such as the Library of Alexandria came under increasing pressure. In the 4th century CE, Alexandria became a center of Christian thought and was home to some of the most influential early Christian scholars. As Christianity gained power, many of the city's remaining pagan institutions, including libraries, were seen as symbols of the old world and were targeted for destruction. The final blow to the library came with the closure of pagan schools in the late 4th and early 5th centuries. In 391 CE, Theophilus, the Patriarch of Alexandria, ordered the destruction of the Serapeum, a temple dedicated to the god Serapis that also housed a branch of the library. Though it is unclear whether the main library had already been destroyed or whether it continued to operate independently, the destruction of the Serapeum marked a symbolic end to Alexandria's intellectual and cultural supremacy. The loss of the library's scrolls and manuscripts, many of which had been stored in the Serapeum, effectively sealed its fate. As the centuries passed, the memory of the Library of Alexandria lived on, but its physical remnants became little more than legends. The intellectual tradition of Alexandria, though fragmented and scattered, would continue to influence scholars and thinkers throughout the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. The loss of the library was felt deeply by those who understood the value of knowledge and the pursuit of wisdom. Alexandria's role as a center of learning would never be fully replaced, and the destruction of the library represented a significant cultural and intellectual loss. Despite the eventual demise of the library, its legacy endures in various forms. The works of scholars like Euclid, Archimedes, and Ptolemy, many of which were housed in the library, continued to shape the development of science, mathematics, and philosophy. The idea of the library as a repository of human knowledge, open to all who sought learning, has inspired countless libraries and institutions around the world. Though the Library of Alexandria may no longer stand, the principles of intellectual openness and the pursuit of knowledge that it embodied live on in the institutions and scholars it inspired. The year 48 BCE marked a dramatic turning point in the history of Alexandria and indeed in the history of the Mediterranean world. It was a year that would see the ancient city, a beacon of knowledge, engulfed in the fires of war. The source of this destruction lay in the power struggle that had gripped the Egyptian throne. The conflict between Queen Cleopatra VII and her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. While the political turmoil within Egypt was the catalyst, it was the arrival of Julius Caesar in Alexandria that would trigger the catastrophic chain of events that led to the siege. The roots of the conflict in Alexandria stretched back to 51 BCE, when Cleopatra ascended to the throne of Egypt after the death of her father, Ptolemy XII. As was customary in the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra was initially made to share the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. However, the relationship between the siblings quickly soured, and a bitter power struggle ensued. Cleopatra, a highly intelligent and politically astute ruler, sought to solidify her position and maintain Egypt's independence amid the growing influence of Rome. Ptolemy XIII, on the other hand, was more easily swayed by the ambitions of his advisors, including his chief minister Pothinus, who hoped to use Roman support to maintain his own power. By the time Caesar arrived in Alexandria, the situation had already reached a boiling point. Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII had both sought the favor of the Roman Republic, each hoping to leverage its power to secure control over Egypt. Cleopatra's appeal to Caesar was based on her desire to maintain her throne and her determination to preserve Egypt's autonomy. She recognized the political realities of the time. Rome, under the leadership of Pompey the Great and Julius Caesar, was becoming the dominant force in the Mediterranean. Caesar, embroiled in a civil war against Pompey, saw Egypt's instability as an opportunity to further his own position in the Roman conflict. Cleopatra, aware of this, made her famous, daring move to smuggle herself into Caesar's campaign, act of both political calculation and personal courage. Caesar was charmed by Cleopatra's wit and ambition, and he saw in her the potential to be a valuable ally in his struggle against Pompey. By aligning himself with Cleopatra, Caesar would not only gain a powerful Egyptian ally but would also secure his interests in the eastern Mediterranean. However, Caesar's arrival in Alexandria would ignite the conflict between him and the forces loyal to Ptolemy XIII. Cleopatra's brother and his advisors, including Pothinus, feared that Caesar's influence would tip the balance of power in Cleopatra's favor. They resolved to challenge Caesar's presence in the city, believing that their control of Alexandria, with its wealth and strategic importance, would be enough to resist him. It was this clash of ambitions and allegiances that would set the stage for the dramatic events that followed. The political intrigue and shifting allegiances in Alexandria were further complicated by the broader geopolitical situation. Julius Caesar, at this point, was embroiled in a larger conflict with Pompey the Great, the leading general of the Roman Senate. The Roman Civil War had divided the Republic into two factions: Caesar's supporters, known as the Caesarians, and Pompey's forces, who sought to preserve the power of the Senate. The defeat of Pompey was critical to Caesar's ambitions, and he sought to press his advantage by gaining control of Egypt, an essential power base in the eastern Mediterranean. In Alexandria, this larger Roman struggle played out with dramatic consequences. As Caesar aligned himself with Cleopatra, his forces, though limited, were drawn into the city's internal strife. The political tension in the streets of Alexandria reached a boiling point. In 48 BCE, the situation finally erupted into open conflict, as the forces of Ptolemy XIII confronted Caesar's small army. Despite being outnumbered and caught in the heart of a city that was rife with local factions, Caesar was determined to hold his ground. The political and military struggle for control of Egypt quickly escalated, and it became apparent that the fate of Alexandria and its intellectual treasures was hanging by a thread. Caesar's forces, although outnumbered, managed to secure the palace district, where Cleopatra sought refuge. With both military and political maneuvering at play, Caesar and Cleopatra's position in the city became more precarious, especially as Ptolemy XIII and his allies mobilized their forces. A battle was inevitable, and the very fabric of Alexandria's ancient intellectual and cultural legacy was about to be torn asunder by the firestorm of war. The first flames of destruction were ignited when Caesar's forces clashed with those loyal to Ptolemy XIII, setting in motion a series of events that would change the course of history forever. The political drama of Alexandria reached its fever pitch in the spring of 48 BCE, when open warfare erupted between Julius Caesar's forces and the Egyptian army loyal to Ptolemy XIII. The city, a bustling cultural and intellectual hub, now became the battleground for an intense and bloody conflict, one that would leave its mark on both Alexandria and the library itself. What began as a political struggle for control of Egypt would soon transform into a full-scale siege, one that would threaten not only the city's political future but also its intellectual legacy. As Caesar's forces took control of the royal palace in Alexandria, Ptolemy XIII's army, commanded by the king's advisors, including his general Achilles, responded with swift aggression. Though Caesar was vastly outnumbered, his military acumen and the loyalty of his small force were crucial in staving off defeat. The siege began as an attempt by Caesar to force Ptolemy's forces into submission, but it soon became a drawn-out battle for survival. As the conflict spread throughout the streets of Alexandria, the Egyptians, under Ptolemy XIII's leadership, were determined to hold Alexandria and its critical resources. The city's wealth, strategic location, and the control it granted over trade routes made it essential to the region's political landscape. Moreover, Alexandria was not just a place of commerce, it was a center of power, culture, and knowledge. The stakes of the siege extended far beyond the personal ambitions of Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII. The very heart of Alexandria's intellectual and cultural life was now in jeopardy. Caesar's forces, although severely outnumbered, had the advantage of military discipline, strategic planning, and a stronghold within the royal palace. The besieged Egyptians, however, were not easily defeated. Over the course of several weeks, the fighting escalated. The battle became increasingly brutal as both sides engaged in fierce skirmishes in the narrow streets and alleyways of the city. Alexandria, with its crowded neighborhoods and labyrinthine streets, became a war zone, its vibrant culture and intellectual legacy now drowned out by the sounds of conflict. As Caesar and his loyalists sought to hold the palace, they were drawn into an unexpected development: the arrival of reinforcements. Caesar, aware of the precariousness of his position, sought assistance from the Roman fleet stationed nearby. By leveraging his ties to the Roman navy, he was able to secure a crucial supply of reinforcements that would tip the scales in his favor. Caesar's reinforcements were not only critical in bolstering his military strength but also in breaking the Egyptian siege of the royal palace. However, it was the arrival of these forces that would lead to one of the most devastating episodes of the siege: the destruction of part of Alexandria's harbor and the devastating loss to the library itself. In the midst of the siege, an attempt to blockade the Egyptian fleet and prevent it from supplying Ptolemy XIII's forces backfired catastrophically. Caesar ordered his fleet to set fire to the Egyptian ships, and in doing so, a large portion of Alexandria's famous harbor was set ablaze. The fire spread quickly, engulfing much of the surrounding area. As the flames grew, they began to consume parts of the city that had once been vibrant centers of learning, culture, and trade. One of the most significant casualties in this fire was the library's collection, which had been housed near the port. While the full extent of the damage to the Library of Alexandria remains a matter of speculation, it is believed that the fires of 48 BC were among the most destructive to its vast holdings. The burning of the harbor likely caused significant loss to the library's scrolls and manuscripts, which may have been stored in warehouses nearby. In the chaos of the fire, countless irreplaceable texts were lost and perhaps forever dispersing the accumulated wisdom of many civilizations into the smoke and ash. The destruction of part of Alexandria's harbor marked the beginning of the end for the Library of Alexandria as a functioning institution. Though parts of the library may have remained intact for a time, the fires of war, compounded by the political turmoil and shifting tides of Roman and Egyptian influence, would eventually lead to the library's gradual disintegration. The siege of 48 BCE, which had started as a struggle for control between two rival factions, had far-reaching consequences that would affect not only the future of Alexandria but also the preservation of its intellectual treasures. Throughout the siege, the intellectual life of the city once flourishing within the library's walls was slowly choked off. Scholars who had once worked in the safety of the library's halls were now scattered or displaced. The streets of Alexandria were no longer a place of academic exchange but a battleground. The city's vibrant scholarly community was torn apart by war, and many of the intellectual achievements that had defined Alexandria for centuries were lost, irretrievably altered by the chaos of the conflict. As Caesar's forces continued to hold out against Ptolemy XIII's army, the future of Alexandria and the future of the Library of Alexandria itself hung in the balance. The siege was a bitter reminder of the fragility of knowledge and culture in the face of war. Once a shining example of human achievement, Alexandria's intellectual legacy was now a casualty of a bitter power struggle. The first flames of destruction, ignited by Caesar's military campaign, had set the stage for the loss of the city's most precious treasure, its library. The conclusion of Caesar's siege of Alexandria in 47 BC marked a significant, albeit tragic, turning point in the city's history. Though Caesar emerged victorious, the toll of the conflict on Alexandria, its people, and its intellectual legacy was devastating. The once thriving center of culture and knowledge epitomized by the Library of Alexandria was forever changed by the flames of war. The aftermath of the siege left deep scars, and the fate of the library became one of the greatest historical tragedies, symbolizing the fragility of human achievement in the face of violence and political strife. When Julius Caesar ultimately triumphed over Ptolemy XIII's forces, the young king was drowned in the Nile River, leaving Cleopatra as the uncontested ruler of Egypt. Caesar's brief involvement in the region, however, was not simply a political maneuver. It was a war that devastated much of Alexandria's infrastructure and cultural heritage. The royal palace, the city's vital harbor, and its scholarly institutions, including the library, were all caught in the chaos of battle. The intellectual treasures that had once made Alexandria the jewel of the ancient world were now at risk of being lost to time and destruction. The most enduring legacy of the 48 BCE siege is the mystery surrounding the ultimate fate of the Library of Alexandria. While it is clear that the library suffered extensive damage, the precise extent of its destruction remains a topic of debate among historians. Some argue that the initial fires set during Caesar's blockade of the harbor dealt a mortal blow to the library's collections. The proximity of the library's storage areas to the port meant that the fire could have easily consumed vast quantities of scrolls and manuscripts stored in the area. In addition, the destruction of the ships in the harbor, which likely carried important texts from around the ancient world, would have further contributed to the loss of knowledge. There are also accounts suggesting that after Caesar's siege, the library's surviving collections may have been dispersed, either by further fires or by the changing political landscape in Alexandria. As Cleopatra sought to solidify her rule, it is possible that the library's holdings were moved or looted, diminishing the collection even further. Yet, there are no definitive records that clarify whether the library was completely destroyed during the siege or whether parts of it survived and persisted for years afterward. The final destruction of the Library of Alexandria may have occurred not in one cataclysmic event, but rather as the result of several incidents over time. One of the most tragic moments in the library's long decline came a few decades after Caesar's victory, when Emperor Aurelian besieged Alexandria again. During the 3rd century CE, this conflict, which was part of Aurelian's campaigns to restore order in the Roman Empire, further damaged the city. Some accounts suggest that during this later siege, additional portions of the library or its holdings were lost. It is also possible that the library's continued existence during this period was tenuous, with many of its texts either lost or scattered to other parts of the Roman Empire. There are other theories that point to the final destruction of the library in the 4th century CE, during the reign of Emperor Theodosius I, who ordered the closure of pagan temples as part of his push for Christianity to become the state religion of the Roman Empire. By this time, Alexandria had already experienced a series of political and religious upheavals, and the library may have been reduced to little more than a memory. The rise of Christianity in Alexandria, which saw the destruction of the Serapeum, the temple dedicated to the god Serapis, which housed some of the library's later collections, could have marked the final blow to the library's survival. The loss of the Library of Alexandria remains one of the most profound cultural tragedies in history. Scholars and intellectuals from all corners of the ancient world had contributed to its vast collection, and its destruction meant the loss of countless works of literature, science, philosophy, and history. In an era without the technological advances that would later facilitate the preservation of knowledge, the loss of the library's scrolls was irreparable. It is believed that many of the texts housed in the library may have been the only surviving copies of their kind, making their loss all the more poignant. Despite this catastrophic loss, the legacy of the Library of Alexandria has lived on in the collective memory of humanity. Though the scrolls and manuscripts themselves are lost to history, the spirit of intellectual pursuit that the library embodied continues to inspire scholars, scientists, and thinkers around the world. The library's role in bridging cultures and preserving the wisdom of the ancient world has become an enduring symbol of the power of knowledge, a reminder of the importance of safeguarding our shared heritage. The final fate of the Library of Alexandria may never be fully known, but its impact on the world of ideas remains undeniable. From its early days as a center of Greek learning to its later role as a hub for cross-cultural exchange, the library was more than just a collection of texts. It was a living testament to the idea that knowledge transcends boundaries and can shape the course of history. Its loss was a great tragedy, but its enduring influence on the course of human civilization is a legacy that cannot be extinguished. The mystery surrounding the destruction of the Library of Alexandria remains one of history's most debated enigmas. Ancient sources, including Plutarch, Strabo, and Ammianus Marcellinus, provide fragmented and often contradictory accounts, leaving historians piecing together the truth through a labyrinth of legend and speculation. One of the most well-known theories points to Julius Caesar's campaign in Alexandria in 48 BC. Caesar himself, in his commentary De Bello Civili, described setting fire to his own ships to block Ptolemaic forces in the harbor. According to ancient historians like Plutarch, this fire spread, ravaging parts of the city, including the library's warehouses near the harbor. The extent of the damage to the main library is uncertain, but Strabo's later writings suggest the library was still partially intact during his time. Another potential culprit is Emperor Aurelian during his campaign to recapture Alexandria in the 3rd century CE. The Roman military's brutal advance through the city, particularly in the Bruchian district where the library was located, may have dealt a significant blow to the remaining collections. Yet, no definitive account confirms this destruction. The third theory attributes the destruction to the decree of Theophilus, the Patriarch of Alexandria, in 391 CE. Under orders from Emperor Theodosius I, pagan temples, including the Serapeum, which possibly housed remnants of the library's collection, were destroyed. Ammianus Marcellinus described the Serapeum as a place of vast learning, which, if true, meant a final loss of knowledge under the guise of religious reform. A final hypothesis involves the Arab conquest of Alexandria in 642 CE. Chronicler Ibn al-Kifti wrote that Caliph Omar ordered the burning of the books, declaring, "If these writings of the Greeks agree with the Book of God, they are useless and need not be preserved. If they disagree, they are pernicious and ought to be destroyed." However, modern scholars often view this story as apocryphal, as earlier Arabic sources do not mention such an event. These competing narratives illustrate not only the difficulty in discerning fact from fiction, but also the diverse forces, political, military, and religious, that may have contributed to the library's end. The loss of the Library of Alexandria is often viewed as one of the greatest tragedies in the history of knowledge. With its destruction, much of the intellectual wealth of the ancient world was lost, and the impact of this disappearance rippled across centuries, affecting not only the immediate aftermath but also shaping the development of civilization for generations to come. The library's loss symbolizes a rupture in the continuity of human thought, as the works and ideas that had been painstakingly collected and preserved were consumed by fire, violence, and neglect. At its height, the Library of Alexandria housed a collection of texts from across the ancient world. These works covered a vast range of topics, from philosophy and science to mathematics, literature, and history. Scholars from all over the ancient world had contributed to its holdings, and it was an intellectual hub where ideas from different cultures could intersect, challenge one another, and inspire new lines of inquiry. The library served as a living archive, not only preserving ancient knowledge, but also fostering the exchange of ideas and the generation of new ones. Its scholars were at the forefront of intellectual pursuits, and many of the greatest minds of antiquity are believed to have spent time there, contributing to a tradition of learning that spanned generations. When the library was lost, so too were many of these texts and the knowledge they contained. While some works from the library may have survived in other parts of the world, much was lost for good, and the sheer volume of material makes it difficult to estimate just how many texts disappeared in the flames. Among the lost works were the scientific treatises of figures like Archimedes and Euclid, the philosophical works of Plato and Aristotle, and the literary works of authors such as Homer and Herodotus. These authors, whose writings laid the foundations of Western intellectual tradition, were no longer available to later generations, leaving a significant gap in the historical record. The intellectual vacuum left by the loss of the Library of Alexandria had profound consequences for the development of knowledge and civilization. In the centuries following the library's destruction, much of the intellectual momentum of the ancient world slowed considerably. The collapse of the library, along with the political instability in Alexandria and the wider Mediterranean world, led to a gradual decline in the transmission of classical knowledge. Scholars, if they existed at all, often worked in isolation rather than in the vibrant, collaborative environment that the library had fostered. During the early Middle Ages, much of the knowledge once housed in Alexandria was either lost entirely or only sparingly preserved in the far-flung corners of the Roman Empire. The works of ancient Greece and Rome were slowly forgotten in the West, and the intellectual focus shifted to Christian theological studies rather than the pursuit of scientific or philosophical inquiry. Why? With the collapse of the Roman Empire and the onset of the Dark Ages, many classical texts remained inaccessible, and the idea of pursuing knowledge for its own sake fell into disfavor. This intellectual stagnation lasted for centuries, and it is often referred to as the lost millennium of European thought, during which scientific and philosophical progress stalled. However, while the destruction of the Library of Alexandria halted the progress of intellectual exchange in the Mediterranean for a time, it also marked a shift in the dissemination of knowledge. In the centuries following the library's loss, the remnants of its wisdom began to resurface, but through different channels. In the Islamic Golden Age, which began in the 8th century CE, scholars in the Islamic world began to rediscover the works of ancient Greek philosophers and scientists. Translations of classical texts into Arabic, often made in the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, breathed new life into the ideas that had been lost to the West. These translations, combined with the intellectual advances of Islamic scholars in fields such as mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, helped preserve much of the knowledge that had once been housed in Alexandria. The Islamic world became the custodian of many of the ancient texts, which were later reintroduced to Europe through translations from Arabic to Latin during the Middle Ages and Renaissance. It was through this rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman knowledge that European scholars would eventually be able to revive classical learning, leading to the Renaissance. The works of Aristotle, Plato, Euclid, and others were once again studied, translated, and disseminated throughout Europe, sparking a new era of intellectual flourishing. Nevertheless, the absence of the Library of Alexandria remained a poignant reminder of the fragility of human knowledge. While many of the texts that had been lost to the flames were rediscovered over time, the idea of a single, central repository for global knowledge never fully materialized again. The library's destruction left an intellectual void, one that could never be entirely filled, and it highlighted the importance of preserving and sharing knowledge for future generations. In the modern era, as the world's libraries and archives continue to store vast amounts of information, the loss of the Library of Alexandria serves as a cautionary tale. The rise of digital archives and the preservation of texts through modern technology have ensured that such a loss is less likely today, but the lessons of the past remain ever relevant. The Library of Alexandria remains a symbol of the potential and the vulnerability of human knowledge, and its fate serves as a reminder of how easily the collective wisdom of humanity can be lost. Though the Library of Alexandria is long gone, its legacy endures in both the imagination of scholars and the wider cultural consciousness. The very idea of the library, the vast, awe-inspiring center of knowledge, where the greatest minds of the ancient world gathered and exchanged ideas, has become a symbol of intellectual aspiration, a repository of untapped human potential. In its destruction, the Library of Alexandria has not simply become a memory of loss, but a legend that continues to capture the collective imagination, symbolizing both the fragility and the enduring power of knowledge. The mystique surrounding the library is rooted in the vastness of its collection. Ancient accounts suggest that the library may have housed hundreds of thousands of scrolls, ranging from scientific treatises to philosophical works, from historical texts to literature from across the ancient world. While exact numbers remain speculative, it is the sheer scale of the library's ambition that has fueled its mythic status. Its very existence, as a center dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, represents an ideal of human achievement, an ideal that, tragically, was destroyed by the forces of war, politics, and time. The allure of the library is also deeply tied to its symbolic role as a melting pot of cultures and ideas. The exchange of knowledge between Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, Persian, and Indian scholars was a testament to the power of intellectual collaboration and cross-cultural dialogue. The library itself was not just a physical structure but an embodiment of an ideal, a space where different civilizations could meet, learn from one another, and advance the collective wisdom of humanity. The destruction of this ideal, in turn, signifies a rupture in the flow of intellectual progress, creating a void that would remain for centuries. Despite the loss of the library's tangible contents, the stories about its existence and its scholars have lived on in the collective imagination. These stories have been passed down through the centuries, often idealizing the library as a utopian center of learning, a golden age that humanity could never fully recover. The legendary figures who worked in the library, such as Euclid, Archimedes, and Herophilus, have become symbols of the intellectual heights humanity is capable of reaching. Their works, though many were lost, continue to inspire scholars, students, and thinkers today. The idea that such minds once gathered in one place to share and expand upon their knowledge fuels the romantic vision of the library and its intellectual community. The mystique of the Library of Alexandria has been further amplified by the historical uncertainty surrounding its destruction. With no definitive account of the library's demise, theories have flourished about the cause of its loss, each one adding layers to its mythic status. Whether it was Caesar's fire, the sacking of the Serapeum, or the neglect brought on by the changing tides of political and religious power, the ambiguity surrounding the event has only added to the library's enigmatic allure. The idea that the true cause of the library's destruction is lost in history creates a sense of mystery that continues to intrigue modern scholars and historians. Moreover, the loss of the Library of Alexandria has inspired the creation of new libraries and institutions dedicated to preserving knowledge. In the wake of its destruction, the idea of a universal repository of human wisdom has been revived in various forms. The most prominent modern embodiment of this vision is the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, which opened in 2002 in Alexandria, Egypt, as a tribute to the ancient library. This new library, with its cutting-edge technology and vast collection of books, is a symbol of humanity's commitment to preserving knowledge for future generations. While it cannot replace the lost library of antiquity, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina represents a modern-day attempt to realize the dream of a universal center of learning, one that is impervious to the ravages of time and war. In addition to physical libraries, the idea of preserving knowledge has also manifested in the rise of digital archives and global information networks. The Internet, in many ways, is the closest humanity has come to replicating the spirit of the ancient Library of Alexandria. Online databases, digital libraries, and open-source platforms provide unprecedented access to human knowledge, allowing people from all corners of the world to engage with the works of past and present thinkers. This digital revolution in information sharing can be seen as a modern homage to the ancient library, as the Internet embodies the same ideals of intellectual exchange, collaboration, and the democratization of knowledge that the Library of Alexandria once symbolized. The enduring mystique of the Library of Alexandria also lies in its philosophical and cultural significance. As a symbol of human aspiration, the library represents the pursuit of knowledge as an eternal endeavor, one that transcends time, place, and circumstance. It stands as a reminder of the value of intellectual curiosity, the importance of preserving and sharing wisdom, and the fragility of human achievements. The library's destruction speaks not only to the vulnerability of physical institutions, but also to the potential for knowledge to be lost forever. This makes the preservation of knowledge, both ancient and modern, an even more urgent priority in today's world. As we continue to build and store vast amounts of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria remains a cautionary tale, urging us to protect the wisdom of the past while continuing to advance human understanding. Its myth persists not only as a tragic story of loss, but as an enduring call to ensure that the knowledge we accumulate today is shared, preserved, and safeguarded for future generations. The story of the Library of Alexandria is not just one of destruction, but of the timeless pursuit of wisdom and endeavor that, despite the setbacks and losses of history, continues to inspire humanity. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria represents not just the physical loss of books, but the erasure of irreplaceable treasures of knowledge. While much about the library's contents remains speculative, accounts from ancient historians and scholars provide valuable glimpses into the vast range of works that were lost in the flames. From scientific treatises to literary masterpieces, the texts housed within Alexandria's walls span centuries of intellectual achievement, and their loss marked a catastrophic moment in the preservation of human culture. In terms of literature and philosophy, the works of some of the most influential figures in the ancient world were housed in the Library of Alexandria. Philosophers such as Plato 428–348 BCE, Aristotle 384–322 BCE, and Epicurus 341–70 BCE were represented, with their texts being widely copied and circulated among scholars throughout the Mediterranean. Although their ideas eventually made their way to later generations through other means, much of the nuanced interpretation and scholarship around their works were also lost. One of the most devastating losses from the library's destruction was the works of the ancient mathematician Euclid c. 300 BC. Euclid's Elements, the foundational text on geometry, became the standard for mathematical education for centuries. In Alexandria, it was not just the elements that were housed there, but also numerous other works of geometry, algebra, and logic that were crucial for the development of mathematics in both the classical and medieval worlds. What is known of Euclid's contributions today has survived only through copies and indirect references made in later works, many of which have been altered or obscured over time. The library also housed the scientific and technical writings of figures such as Archimedes c. 287 to 12 BCE, Ptolemy c. 100 to 170 CE, and Herophilus c. 335 to 280 BC. Archimedes' contributions to geometry, hydrostatics, and mechanics were foundational, yet much of his body of work is believed to have been lost in the flames. Ptolemy's Almagest, a key astronomical text that laid the groundwork for later astronomical models, would have been destroyed, as would the medical writings of Herophilus, which pushed the boundaries of anatomy and human physiology. Their work influenced generations of scientists and mathematicians, but the library's loss made it impossible for these foundational texts to be passed down in their original forms. Beyond these famous figures, countless works from lesser-known but equally significant scholars were lost. It is estimated that the library's holdings included an extraordinary array of texts from regions all over the ancient world, many of which had never been translated or made available in the Greek-speaking world. Babylonian astronomical records, Persian mathematical innovations, and Indian medical treatises are believed to have been among the scrolls that disappeared, taking with them entire systems of knowledge. These texts had the potential to influence intellectual thought in ways that remain speculative today, leaving scholars to imagine what might have been had they survived. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria was not solely a blow to scientific and philosophical knowledge, it also erased a wealth of cultural and historical records. The library's collection was not limited to Greek and Egyptian works but included texts from many parts of the ancient world, offering a rich tapestry of literature, history, and myth. The loss of these records represented a significant break in the continuity of cultural memory, leaving historians and scholars to wonder about the untold stories of the ancient world. Among the lost works were histories of ancient peoples, written by historians whose names have long since faded from memory. These texts might have provided invaluable insights into the lives of early civilizations, offering narratives about the rise and fall of empires, the lives of kings and queens, and the intricate relationships between different cultures. Works such as the Histories of Babylon by Berossus c. 3rd century BCE, the Egyptian Chronicles by Manetho c. 3rd century BC, and possibly early accounts of Persian and Indian societies could have been among those lost. The cultural impact of the library's destruction was also felt in the loss of literary treasures. Ancient Greek and Egyptian poets and playwrights whose works were collected by the library left behind no lasting traces of their creations. Texts of epic poems, lyric verses, and dramatic tragedies that had once captivated audiences across the ancient Mediterranean vanished, depriving later generations of their artistic expression and cultural context. The library's collections were not just academic, they were also a reflection of the cultural vibrancy of their time, blending intellectual pursuits with the rich traditions of literature and performance. One particularly significant loss was the destruction of works related to the ancient religious traditions of Egypt and other ancient cultures. The library housed sacred texts and mythologies that reflected the spiritual beliefs of ancient peoples, offering insights into the gods' rituals and philosophies that guided their lives. The knowledge contained in these texts would have offered a deeper understanding of the religious landscape of the ancient world, allowing for a fuller appreciation of how religion and philosophy intertwined to shape civilization. The loss of these works also meant that many of the esoteric and mystical traditions of ancient religions were lost to history. The loss of the Library of Alexandria had profound consequences for the intellectual development of Europe during the medieval period, as much of the classical knowledge housed in the library was lost to Western scholars for centuries. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe entered the so-called Dark Ages, a time of political instability, religious dominance, and intellectual stagnation. The absence of Alexandria's texts contributed to this gap, hindering the continuity of intellectual thought. While some works survived in the Byzantine Empire or in the Islamic world, much of the classical knowledge that had once been preserved in Alexandria was no longer directly available to Western scholars. It was only through the translations of Arabic scholars during the Islamic Golden Age that many of these works re-entered Western consciousness. These scholars did not merely preserve ancient texts, but also expanded upon them, integrating Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge to create new advances in science, medicine, and philosophy. The revival of classical texts during the Renaissance was a monumental achievement, but the gap left by the destruction of the library meant that many of the original works could not be fully restored. The absence of the Library of Alexandria served as a reminder of the fragility of knowledge, illustrating the dangers of political and cultural upheaval. The efforts to recover the lost wisdom underscored the importance of preserving knowledge for future generations and highlighted the need for libraries, archives, and institutions to safeguard humanity's collective intellectual heritage. The legend of the Library of Alexandria's destruction has taken on a life of its own throughout history, often obscuring the true events and causes behind the loss of this great repository of knowledge. The popular narrative, woven with myth and mystery, tells of an all-consuming fire that reduced the library's vast holdings to ashes, leaving only the whispers of its once mighty influence. Over time, these tales have been embellished, and as the years passed, the library's end became as much a symbol of intellectual loss as it was a real historical event. One of the earliest and most enduring versions of this myth revolves around the role of Julius Caesar in the library's destruction. In 48 BCE, during his siege of Alexandria, a fire broke out in the city, and many sources suggest that the library's collection was among the casualties. Some historians claim that Caesar's forces intentionally set the fire as part of a military strategy, while others argue that the flames spread uncontrollably from the nearby docks, eventually engulfing the library. The idea of a deliberate destruction, fueled by a desire to erase knowledge or to prevent its use against Rome, has persisted in historical imagination. However, the lack of clear records from the period leaves the true cause of the fire ambiguous. Another prevalent myth is that the library's destruction occurred in a single, catastrophic event, reducing all of Alexandria's scholarly works to dust. In reality, the loss was more gradual. The library's collection endured multiple blows over the centuries, each contributing to its decline. The fire during Caesar's siege was certainly a significant event, but it was not the sole cause of the library's eventual destruction. Further damage occurred during later conflicts, particularly during the reign of Emperor Aurelian in the 3rd century CE, and additional losses were sustained as Christian authorities took control of Alexandria in the following centuries. The library's fall was not one event, but a slow erosion over time, each moment feeding the myth of its sudden and complete demise. This mythologizing of the library's end reflects the cultural weight placed on its knowledge. The stories of its destruction, though rooted in historical events, have been amplified to symbolize the fragile nature of knowledge itself. The idea of the library as a beacon of wisdom that was cruelly and irreversibly destroyed plays into larger themes of loss, cultural decline, and the idea that civilizations are defined not just by their achievements, but by what they fail to preserve. The mystique surrounding the Library of Alexandria has only grown over the centuries, as its memory has been enshrined in literature, art, and popular culture. The library's tragic loss has captured the collective imagination, becoming a symbol of the fragility of knowledge the fleeting nature of human achievement, and the pursuit of enlightenment amidst the forces of destruction. Over time, the library has been reimagined not just as a physical institution, but as an ideal metaphor for the limitless potential of human learning and discovery. In literature, the Library of Alexandria has often been depicted as a place of unearthly wisdom and the embodiment of intellectual ambition. Writers have used the image of the library to explore themes of knowledge, power, and the struggle for intellectual freedom. In works like Jorge Luis Borges' The Library of Babel, the library takes on an almost mythological quality, representing the infinite possibilities of knowledge and the dangers of trying to comprehend it all. Borges' story, written in the 20th century, is one of many modern reinterpretations of the concept of a library that holds the sum total of human knowledge, reflecting both the potential and peril inherent in the quest for understanding. The library's symbolism has also taken root in the development of modern institutions. The establishment of national libraries and academic archives can be seen as an homage to the spirit of Alexandria, an attempt to preserve and expand upon the intellectual achievements of humanity. The Library of Congress in the United States and the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris, among others, can trace their inspiration to the concept of a universal repository of knowledge that was first realized in Alexandria. These institutions are modern-day attempts to fulfill the mission of preserving humanity's intellectual heritage, a mission that was tragically interrupted by the loss of the original library. The library's allure also manifests in the quest for knowledge that defines much of the modern era. The search for lost texts, from ancient scrolls to forgotten manuscripts, continues to capture the imaginations of scholars and adventurers alike. Much like the stories of hidden treasures, the idea of recovering the lost works of Alexandria inspires individuals to undertake historical and archaeological investigations. Although few true discoveries of Alexandria's lost knowledge have been made, the idea that more is yet to be found continues to fuel research and excavation in the ancient city. This enduring hope keeps the mystique of the library alive, suggesting that the secrets of Alexandria may still have a place in the future of human learning. The myth of the Library of Alexandria's burning serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of human knowledge and the tenuous nature of intellectual legacy. Whether the library was destroyed in a single, fiery event or gradually dismantled over time, the loss of Alexandria's collection has come to symbolize the dangers that arise when knowledge is not protected, preserved, and passed on. The story of the library's end is not just a tale of lost books and scrolls. It is a cautionary narrative about the importance of safeguarding cultural heritage for future generations. In the modern world, the lessons of the Library of Alexandria resonate more deeply than ever. As technology advances and the sheer volume of human knowledge increases exponentially, we face new challenges in preserving and sharing that knowledge. The preservation of digital archives, the protection of cultural artifacts, and the promotion of open access to information are just a few of the ongoing efforts aimed at ensuring that humanity's intellectual heritage does not suffer the same fate as the Library of Alexandria. The burning of the library also underscores the need for the intellectual community to remain vigilant in the face of political and social upheaval. While the ancient library may have been destroyed by war, natural disasters, and religious conflict, the loss of knowledge in the modern world can be just as easily caused by censorship, ideological suppression, or neglect. In the face of these challenges, the spirit of Alexandria remains an enduring symbol of intellectual resilience. Its loss reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is a fragile endeavor, one that requires collective effort and commitment to preserve and protect it from the forces that seek to erase it. As we continue to build upon the intellectual legacy of the ancient world, the memory of the Library of Alexandria stands as a testament to both the heights of human achievement and the depths of our vulnerability. Its mystique endures not because of the books it contained, but because of the lessons its loss has imparted to those who seek to safeguard the wisdom of the past for future generations. The Library of Alexandria's influence did not end with its destruction. Rather, it echoed through history, continuing to shape the intellectual landscape of the Western world for centuries. Perhaps no period reflects this more clearly than the Renaissance. This cultural rebirth, which began in Italy in the 14th century, was fueled in part by the rediscovery of ancient texts, many of which were once preserved in the Great Library. The Renaissance saw a revival of classical knowledge, and many of the works housed in Alexandria were rediscovered, translated, and studied anew, often sparking a revolution in art, science, and philosophy. The Renaissance humanists, such as Petrarch and Erasmus, were deeply influenced by the Greek and Roman texts that the library had once safeguarded. Their focus on classical antiquity was not just an intellectual exercise. It was a return to a golden age of learning that they believed had been interrupted by the fall of Rome. In this revival, the spirit of Alexandria was alive again. Ancient Greek philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists like Plato, Aristotle, Euclid, and Archimedes became the intellectual pillars upon which Renaissance scholars built their own work. These figures, whose writings had been studied and preserved by the scholars of Alexandria, became the foundation of modern thought in the Western world. The development of printing in the 15th century further amplified the library's indirect influence. With the advent of the printing press, the works of ancient authors were able to be reproduced and disseminated on an unprecedented scale. This allowed the ideas that had flourished in Alexandria to be spread across Europe and beyond, giving rise to new intellectual movements and laying the groundwork for the Enlightenment. The Renaissance, in many ways, was an intellectual reclamation of the very knowledge the Library of Alexandria had once held, ensuring that its legacy lived on through new generations of thinkers and creators. Beyond the Renaissance, the legacy of the Library of Alexandria has endured in the fields of modern scholarship, science, and technology. The library's commitment to collecting and preserving knowledge from a wide range of cultures and disciplines set a precedent for future libraries, archives, and academic institutions. Its legacy can be seen in the very structure of modern research, where interdisciplinary study and the sharing of knowledge across boundaries are considered fundamental principles. The library's practice of translation, bringing together texts from different languages and cultures, laid the groundwork for the global exchange of ideas that continues to this day. This spirit of intellectual exchange has only grown stronger in the modern era. The rise of universities, academic conferences, and digital archives mirrors the open exchange of ideas that Alexandria championed. Today, scholars are able to access and build upon the work of thinkers from all corners of the globe, much as the Alexandrians did centuries ago. The Library of Alexandria may be gone, but its mission to bridge cultures and promote learning lives on in institutions like the Library of Congress in the United States, the British Library, and the many online databases that provide access to the wealth of human knowledge. Moreover, Alexandria's legacy is evident in the field of technology. In the realm of information systems and data storage, the memory of the library can be seen in the development of digital libraries and archives that seek to replicate its function of preserving knowledge for future generations. Just as the library once sought to gather and catalog the world's written knowledge, modern digital archives aim to ensure that no piece of human intellectual history is lost. This drive to preserve and disseminate information continues to inspire technological advancements, from the creation of vast online databases to the exploration of artificial intelligence systems that seek to process and understand the world's knowledge in new ways. The enduring legacy of the Library of Alexandria is a testament to the power of knowledge to transcend time and space. Though its physical collection was destroyed, the ideas it nurtured have never been fully extinguished. From the ancient world to the Renaissance, from modern scholarship to the technological advances of today, the library's influence continues to shape our understanding of the world. Its story reminds us of the fragile nature of knowledge and the importance of safeguarding intellectual achievements for future generations. The library's mystique, its allure, and the mystery surrounding its demise only serve to heighten its significance in the cultural imagination. The Library of Alexandria represents not just a place of learning but the very idea of intellectual pursuit, the striving to understand the world and our place within it. It is a symbol of humanity's quest for knowledge and wisdom, a quest that has continued long after the library's shelves were emptied. In the end, the true legacy of the Library of Alexandria is not just in the books it contained or the scholars who studied there. It lies in the idea that knowledge is a living, breathing entity, one that must be nurtured, shared, and passed on to future generations. The lessons of Alexandria remind us that intellectual progress is a collective endeavor, one that requires the protection and preservation of knowledge, the exchange of ideas across cultures, and a commitment to the pursuit of truth. As long as humanity continues to seek knowledge, the spirit of the Library of Alexandria will endure.